This works. This is dangerous.
Chair Lee, we're ready when you are.
Thank you. It's 6:03. I will now call the March 18th, 2026 Planning Commission meeting to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Bedard,
Present.
Commissioner Malikoff,
Present.
Commissioner McPhail,
Present.
Vice Chair Mead,
Here.
Chair Lee.
Present. Please stand and join me as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Agenda finalization. Are there any changes to our agenda?
I don't believe we have any, Chair.
Thank you. Moving to item 1, public comments. Will the clerk please read the statement of participation?
This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items not appearing on the regular agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the Commission may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. The Chair may also request a brief response from staff to questions raised during public comment, or may request that a matter be agendized for a future meeting. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. Chair did not receive any requests to speak forms. If you're a member of the public and you wish to comment on items not on the agenda, please raise your hand. I see none, Chair.
Thank you. Moving to item 2, approval of minutes. The minutes of February the 18th, 2026. Do we have any corrections or addition to the minutes?
Chair Lee, we do have a correction to the minutes. On page 10, the last 2 paragraphs, and page 11, the first 5 paragraphs have been deleted. They were a duplicate entry on the minutes.
Thank you. Do we have any corrections or additions from the Commission? Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on the minutes?
I did not receive any requests, and it appears we have none.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion and a second to approve?
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner McPhail and a second by Vice Chair Mead. Please vote. Chair Lee, do you see the vote screen?
I do not.
I do
Please-
not.
Please try refreshing your browser at the top. Okay, Chair Lee, would you like to verbalize your vote for me?
Yes, it's aye.
And Commissioner Malikoff?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries, all ayes.
Now it comes up. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
now it comes up.
Moving on to item 3 on our agenda, public hearing items. We move to item A, conditional use permit number 0992024, a request for SmartLink AT&T Wireless to construct a 75-foot tall unmanned telecommunications facility located at 27620 Landau Boulevard. May we have a staff report?
Yes, good evening, Chair Lee, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Dom Camps, Associate Planner. This evening, I'll be presenting Conditional Use Permit 099-2024, which proposes the installation of an unmanned wireless telecommunications facility on a city-owned property. The applicant, which is SmartLink AT&T, submitted an application for this conditional use permit on July 26th of 2024. The proposed facility will be located on the city-owned property located at 27620 Landau Boulevard. The site is occupied by an approximately 13,000 square foot building. The northern portion of that building is occupied by the Cathedral City Fire Department, Station 3, and the southern portion of the building is a multi-tenant commercial space. The subject site is zoned planned community commercial, and according to the municipal code, commercial antennas are permitted in all zoning districts subject to a conditional use permit. Surrounding uses include residential uses to the north and east, as well as vacant residentially zoned land on the west side of Landau, as well as commercial uses to the south of the project site. This project was presented to the Architectural Review Committee on September 3rd. The committee recommended Planning Commission approval of the project, subject to modifications to the proposed landscaping plan, which I'll discuss later in this presentation. So the applicant is proposing to lease an approximately 654 square foot area at the southwest corner of the city-owned property. It's set back from Landau Boulevard by approximately 30 feet. The area is outlined in red on this slide. It's currently a landscape area in the existing parking lot for the commercial tenant spaces. The images on the right show the street view of the site in its current condition. The lease area is partially screened from the south by existing shrubs, which are on the neighboring property and would remain in place. Here is the proposed site plan. The proposed project will be constructed again in the existing landscape island, and it will not result in any reduction in parking spaces for the commercial building. The project proposes an 18 by 20 foot equipment enclosure area containing a equipment generator or equipment cabinet and generator, each on a concrete pad, and that equipment will be screened from above with an 8-foot tall canopy. The canopy itself will be screened from view by the 9-foot enclosure wall. The proposed monopalm will be located immediately to the east of the enclosure area. According to the grading plans that were approved when the commercial building and fire station were originally constructed, this plan's from 1991, part of the project site was originally designed to be a retention area. However, over time, a water retention area, that is. However, over time, it has filled in with blow sand. So as part of the project, a new retention basin and dry well will be installed to the west of the equipment enclosure. The existing asphalt curb that's along the eastern side of the lease area will also be replaced with a 6-inch concrete curb. So the proposed cell tower will be it will be 75 feet tall and disguised as a monopalm. The monopalm will include 12 panel antennas, which will be screened and concealed with imitation fronds, which will be painted to match the fronds. The trunk of the monopalm will also be covered in a palm tree bark-like material. The 9-foot tall masonry enclosure will be visually prominent from Landau Boulevard, particularly from the north and from the west, or rather the north and west sides of the enclosure will be. Staff has therefore requested that the sides of the enclosure that will be visible from the public right-of-way be covered with a decorative motif or design. Accordingly, the applicant has agreed to provide a $3,000 grant for a local artist to paint a mural on the sides of the enclosure that are visually prominent from Landau. Artist selection for the mural will be coordinated with the Public Arts Commission. So this is the proposed landscape plan. 2 new Mexican fan palms are proposed to be planted within the existing landscape islands in the parking area, which are currently empty. We do typically request that when monopalms are being installed, that the applicant install real palm trees in the vicinity. However, staff does have a question for the Planning Commission of whether shade trees could actually be more useful in this instance. So that could be something to discuss. The retention basin, it will be lined with angular rock, and the submitted landscape plan proposes the planting of Russian sage shrubs along the east side of the retention basin, as well as along the southern edge of the lease area. However, the Architectural Review Committee expressed concern that the sage shrubs could present problems for the function and maintenance of the retention area, and so they recommended the project for approval, but with boulders of various sizes in place of those sage shrubs that are on the eastern side of the retention area. The shrubs on the south side of the lease area should remain in place. Oh, and those are the ones that the ARC requested to remove. So the Cathedral City Municipal Code, as I mentioned, it permits commercial antennas in all zoning districts subject to a conditional use permit, and it states that development standards are to be determined by the Planning Commission on a case-by-case basis. The municipal code does not specifically address wireless telecommunications facility. The city does have an uncodified policy from 2010, which limits the height of new towers to 65 feet and recommends a minimum 300-foot separation from residentially zoned properties. However, this policy may conflict with the Federal Communications Act, which states that local governments may not regulate in a manner that prohibits or has the effect of prohibiting the provision of personal wireless services. In their application, the applicant did provide a justification for why this site was selected for the proposed facility. And due to the configuration of the site, a 300-foot separation from residentially zoned properties would not be feasible. The applicant also provided a coverage map indicating why additional AT&T coverage is needed in this area. Therefore, the uncodified city regulations could have the effect of prohibiting the provision of wireless services in this case. I'll also note that there is an existing monopalm located just to the north of Madrid Road, right off Landau Boulevard. This site was included in that site analysis. It has existing co-location on it, and so it essentially would not have space for additional co-location without increasing the height and losing the monopalm effect. Staff is recommending that the conditions of approval be adopted with some amendments, as shown on this slide. Condition 3.2 is revised to refer to a final building permit instead of a certificate of occupancy, since there will not be occupancy. Condition 3.3 is revised to include the ARC's recommendation to replace the sage shrubs with boulders on the east side of the equipment of the retention basin. Condition 3.5 is revised to refer to proposed structures, since no buildings per se are being proposed as part of the project. And condition 3.13 is revised to specifically call out maintenance of the imitation palm fronds when discussing maintenance of the site. In terms of CEQA, the project meets the criteria for the construction of new small structures and is therefore eligible for the Class 3 categorical exemption. And the project was noticed in accordance with the municipal code. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission find the project exempt from the California Quality Act and approve conditional use permit 099-2024, subject to the attached conditions of approval as amended in this presentation and based on the findings contained in the staff report. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Moving to questions for staff from the Commission. Commissioner McPhail.
Just a couple. You answered one of my questions because I did watch the Architectural Review Committee meeting where they had the question about the vegetation versus the rocks, and I was wondering, do we need to change that? And you have amended that accordingly, so that's good. I was just wondering, in terms of this is city land, and we are leasing the land to this applicant. Do we have examples elsewhere where we have done this on city land? And is there like a standard lease term for how long these go on for, and a standard square foot amount we get from these? Is it kind of a market rate thing?
That is something I could look into, but I don't have those answers off the top of my head. I did see the draft lease agreement when this project was initially being reviewed, but I'm not certain of what the term was for this specific one.
We do have other properties. I can't recall the lease terms, but they're extended. There's a cell tower in the middle of the soccer park that you may not, or it looks like one of the light standards. So that has multiples on it. And behind the fire station, right in this neighborhood, there's another cell tower that we lease out to as well.
And we have a certain per square foot lease amount that we apply to all
But
these?
it's
or does it
usually the
differ
market
in
rate at the
negotiation?
time of what the lease offering is that we engage. And obviously, it provides additional revenue for the city.
Yep. The other small comment I had about it was you mentioned the offer by the applicant to provide $3,000 for an artist to make a design. In the conditions of approval 311I, it simply says a stipend. It doesn't mention an amount. And I was wondering, should we codify and have the amount, I guess, in that condition of approval, if that's okay?
I think the commission could add that into the conditions of approval.
That's it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Mead.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Malakoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the applicant's not here, I take it, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and can you go back to the slide just before this? Well, I guess the one, that one, okay. We talked on the phone, and I appreciate you addressing all the minor issues I had on clarifications on the conditions of approval and the Scribner issues, which I learned that word from our city engineer. So you addressed all those issues. The only, if the applicant was here, the only question I would really have is, I'm always a proponent of co-location, and I would be curious to ask them if, what would it be more to co-locate and make the changes to that facility, or to build this new one? And, I'm not sure what the answer is, but I understand, maybe there's only so many that you can co-locate on one facility, but I guess in the future, it would be nice to know, which one would cost more if that's the reason that they're not going to co-locate.
I did reach out to them just to clarify about that existing monopalm that's nearby, and they did say that it was sort of a limitation of monopalms, that there's only so much equipment that can be installed before you sort of lose the imitation palm tree effect.
So it would probably be easier to co-locate. I'm not saying they should have co-located here, but about on Landau and I think 30th, where the school is. It's a tower that's not stealth at all, but I think there's like 4 or 5 facilities there. So, but it's probably easier to do it on something like that than a monopalm. So that makes a lot of sense. And thank you for taking action on those items. I appreciate it.
Happy to help.
Commissioner Bedard.
I just have a simple question. Can you go back to the slide showing the actual drawings? Keep going. That one. Back one. Sorry, the visual.
Oh, this.
Yeah, those. So I happen to strongly dislike these things, but this graphic makes it look like it's a very pretty palm tree. I've never seen them actually look like a pretty palm tree. Is there some new technology or something that will make it look like a pretty palm tree? Or does it just look like metal branches sticking up into the air?
It will look like a standard monopalm.
So it's
I think
not
this is-
changed?
No, that's
Okay.
right.
And the wall that we are looking at for the Public Arts Commission is the north elevation?
The north and west.
Oh, both walls, okay. Okay, that was it, thank you.
On the staff report, you talk about how the water retention basin filled in over time. So who is responsible for ensuring that the new one that's proposed is going to be maintained correctly?
The conditions of approval, particularly in the engineering section, do place the onus on the applicant to maintain those facilities.
Okay.
Yeah, and we usually have covenants for this, but since we're the owner of the property, we have a code enforcement department that can get on the applicant to take care of that. So, and them being our tenants, we can actually issue the notice directly.
Okay, but it will be their cost to maintain that.
Absolutely.
Okay. And similarly, the fronds on the monopalm, they, particularly in high winds, they tend to come off or they deteriorate. Is that maintenance covered in the?
The site will need to be, and I concur with that in the high wind areas. I've seen the metal monopalm
Right.
fronds come off. As we are the landlord, it makes it a lot easier for us to notify them they're in violation of the lease and have to restore it to original condition.
Condition 3.13 covers it.
Yep.
If you look it up.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
you.
Would you put the recommendation slide up? Thank you.
Chair, if I may, Dom, you had mentioned shade trees over possible replacement of palms. I would be in favor of shade trees. The area would be, as indicated, the two sort of next to or in front of the two parking spaces, or those parking spaces that we're seeing right now. So that would be the Mexican fan palms, correct?
That's what's proposed right now, and that this was sort of something that occurred to staff last minute, but that because they're in those parking lot islands, that instead of serving to disguise the monopalm in this case, maybe it'd be more useful as shade trees, but it's sort of an open question.
I'd prefer shade trees.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there something we should add to the amendment? Would anybody be willing to put
Well, we
shade
haven't-
trees as compared, or?
We'll get there in just a second, and you can propose that for sure. Okay, so we'll start, as usual, with a motion, and then we can open discussion and add amendments. So, would you like to propose the,
I'll do the amendment, not the motion.
okay, all right.
I'll find that the project should be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Section 15303, Class 3, new construction or conversion of small structures, and approval of conditional use permit 099-2024, subject to the attached conditions of approval as amended in this presentation and based on the findings contained in the staff report.
Thank you, and is
Chair
there a
Lee?
yes.
I do apologize. I don't believe we opened the hearing,
Oh, I am sorry.
so we'll
Since
put
there's
a
no
hold
public-
on that motion.
Yeah. Okay, well, I will then open the public hearing. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak?
Any members here to speak on this item? And I don't believe the applicant team is here. Okay, we have none, Chair.
Then I'll close the public hearing.
Thank you.
And I'll go back to the matter of this motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. And during questions for staff, I had two potential amendments. One was to add in text referring to $3,000 for the amount for the artwork, and the other a discussion of shade trees or palm trees. Correct?
Shade trees preferred as an amendment.
Okay. I don't think we'll have, is there any objection to adding the $3,000 in? No. No, okay. So discussion on palm trees or shade trees?
Well, I normally don't, I normally agree with Commissioner Bedard on the shade trees, but in this case, I think that the reason that they're palm trees is to match the monopalm and to kind of help screen it from the other, the monopalm, which doesn't always look exactly like a palm, as Commissioner Bedard said, but I think having other palms around it will kind of help. And I think that's why they proposed the palm trees there rather than a canopy shade tree. But I normally would agree completely with what you're saying, but I think that matching the monopalm is kind of more important in this case.
Other comments?
I'm going to agree with Commissioner Bedard. I think that especially I go up into that area north of Vistachino a lot, to that Stater Brothers and to the restaurants over there. It could use more shade, and I don't think we're fooling anyone with the monopalm. Personally, I was going to, when you were talking about whether or not it's the monopalm that restricts the co-location, why we even push for monopalms, frankly. If we could get more co-location and reduce the number of structures, I would say forget the monopalms in general. But I would prefer to have the shade trees. And I think I understand what you're saying about trying to blend them in, but I don't think it's as important as the shade personally.
I can see both sides, but I think I do fall with Commissioner Bedard in this case. I mean, this monopalm is 75 feet high, so I think having a couple of regular palm trees isn't really going to camouflage it in any way. So we may as well get some shade out of the bargain as well. So I'd be in favor of shade tree in this example too.
Yeah, I think I agree generally with that conclusion. We've talked a lot in the development code about shade and improving shade, particularly in parking lots, and adding shade trees in these two locations will add a little shade for those cars. The palms won't provide any shade, we know that, and I would agree with the comments that against a 75-foot monopole, it's not going to look any different.
If we're going to go in that direction then, and I could see we are, then I would want to add to your condition that it be a 24-inch box tree rather than a 15-gallon. So it's a mature tree that they put in, not a little pencil tree. Is it okay to modify the?
I think that's a wonderful suggestion. And just to clarify from Dom, is that space, will it hold one tree? Will it hold two trees? I don't know what the square footage or allowance
It's a
is.
finger planter, so it probably only
Probably
holds
just one, yeah.
It's not something that I've looked into. I do think regarding the size of the planter, sorry, I'm just flipping through my conditions of approval quickly.
Well, while Dom's looking at that, I would add that the thing to consider is that you have a tree canopy. And so as it grows and matures, 2 trees might be too crowded.
Right.
Correct.
Well,
That's why I was asking
one tree
just
in
the
each of those
dimensions.
locations that
Right.
are shown on the landscape plan.
That's why I was asking just if it could handle 2 trees or one.
So I think generally, and we had a similar discussion recently and subsequently learnt that, we don't want to set conditions that are specific, so specific that it may be difficult for staff to get that into the space. So I think we can go with a condition that says shade trees in those 2 locations instead of the 2 palms.
24-inch box shade trees.
You can add that. I'll ask in a minute for someone to actually draft the amendment, and we will need the either a new condition or amendment to a condition in order to add that.
So on my motion, I'd like to add that there be a condition, be a condition that, was it $3,000 for outreach to an artist? So add that the condition of approval relating to an artist, that it be a $3,000 for the outreach to the artist, and that the 2 palm trees be converted to a 24-inch box canopy tree.
Okay.
Just condition 3.111 currently says, the applicant shall provide the stipend for the equipment enclosure mural to the Public Arts Commission.
So
We could change it to say the
so
applicant shall
my-
provide $3,000 for the equipment.
in my motion, then it would be that condition 3.11 be $3,000 that the applicant would pay towards finding an artist.
I would just say possibly as a slight amendment, 3,000 or more. Because maybe they want to give 3,200. I don't know specifically, but if that's a number, I don't want less than that as something to work with an artist. But
Staff already work with the applicant, so
is that
they can still give more money if they want, but
correct? That's why I'm saying that the dollar amount and would, I think, be a
I think
little.
we should stick with what staff have said in their report, $3,000.
Well, okay. Sure, Chair.
Okay, so no more discussion on the amendment.
Does the seconder approve?
Yeah. Do I have a second for the amendment?
I will second the amendment.
So now we vote on the amendment.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Malakoff, a second by Vice Chair Mead. We'll take a roll call on this. Commissioner Bedard?
Aye.
Commissioner Malakoff?
Yes.
Commissioner McPhail?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mead?
Yes.
Chair Lee?
Yes.
And that amendment motion carries all ayes. And now we'll move to the original motion on the floor as amended. And I believe that motion was made by Commissioner Malakoff, correct? And seconded by Commissioner McPhail. This one we'll go ahead and put in the system. So 1 second.
Was the tree covered by what we just said as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, please vote.
Oh,
It's there now.
thought we did that.
Surprise.
And motion carries all ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to item B, Forest Lawn Cathedral City Specific Plan Project, a proposal of Forest Lawn Memorial Park Association to establish the Forest Lawn Cathedral City Specific Plan for the long-term development of the existing cemetery use consisting of a total of 10 acres located on the southwest corner of Ramon Road and Duval Drive, including a general plan amendment and change of zone. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, Chair Lee, members of the commission. So as indicated, Chair Lee, we do have a specific plan, a general plan amendment and a zone change before the commission for consideration to then make a recommendation to our city council. But I did want to introduce that Forest Lawn does have their development team here today. And so we do have Dennis Madison and Brian Emerson with the architecture and engineering portion of Forest Lawn. We also do have in attendance today John Abel, who is the vice president for the Cathedral City location. Then the other the other arm of the team, you have from T&B Planning, you have Julia Malosos, who's the planner that worked on the specific plan. Tina Anderson is also worked on the initial study and mitigating neg deck. And then representing the city, who did the peer review on the environmental review, we do have Deborah Light from M&S Engineering. And then we also have Siobhan Cooney, who is legal counsel for Forest Lawn. And so staff has worked extensively with this team on the project. So we're all excited to be presenting this to the commission today. Go back. So Forest Lawn, Cathedral City, has owned this, owned Forest Lawn Memorial Park for 100 years throughout Southern California. This particular site they've owned for about 20 years, but the cemetery, which is located on the southwest corner of Duval and Ramon, was first approved in 1992 by the city, who issued a conditional use permit for the mortuary building. And through subsequent approvals over a 30-year period, it's developed to what you see today, which includes the mortuary, chapel, crematory, mausoleums, wall crypts, columbria, and such, including ancillary uses such as the office uses and parking. Under construction at the site, there are additional interment structures being constructed. This area that's already developed and includes the construction area is referred to as the north area of the specific plan in the project site. Forest Lawn did acquire several years ago the south portion, which currently houses a mini storage facility. However, the intention is to redevelop that site and to expand the cemetery use. However, as the north area, as you can see, it developed over a period of time. The south area will also develop over a longer period of time. The structures that are proposed will come in different phases and increments. And because of that, Forest Lawn is seeking a development surety and a streamlined development review process for that future expansion. So I know the Planning Commission and staff have had various discussions in the past about a specific plan and when a specific plan is appropriate or more appropriate. We've talked about when we have large areas that don't have infrastructure, still have to be master planned. A specific plan is really geared towards that. In this particular instance, although those site considerations aren't in place, we did work with the Forest Lawn team, and we worked with our legal counsel and their legal counsel to determine, based upon our zoning code and the tools we have in place, what would work best to provide that development surety and streamline for, future development. We looked at a CUP, a PUD. Those type of applications have time limits on them as far as an extended development timeline as Forest Lawn is proposing. And so really based upon what we have available, the best mechanism to achieve the goals of Forest Lawn and also to facilitate review process for both staff and the applicant, the specific plan was the best tool that we had to achieve that. And so that's why today you're seeing that specific plan as part of the project. So what's proposed with build out, you have the north area has occupied space and non-occupied space and then interment spaces. Here you see what is proposed as far as development, but ultimately, once that south side is built out, there will be about 30,000 square feet of occupied space, such as offices, storage rooms, things of that nature. You'll have 315,000 square feet of non-occupied space, which basically is the internment areas, building spaces, and then you'll have the actual internment spaces, which is about 84,000 square feet. Again, the general plan amendment to change the designation from general commercial to neighborhood commercial, change the zoning from planned community commercial to neighborhood business park. And then also what is very, very relevant for today's discussion is the current operations and with build out how that's going to work. So currently, there's about 3 to 4 funeral services per day, 60 to 80 attendees for those services. There are 2 witness creations per day, and I'm sorry, I misspelled that. There's 2 cremations per day that may have witnesses up to 5 to 10 attendees. And then currently, there's 38 employees. So when build-out happens on that south side, it's not a direct correlation with we're building all this area, we're gonna have so much more, many more services, more employees. And actually, as Forest Lawn works on this for full build-out, they see that at most, there might be 1 additional service per day and 4 additional employees to support that build-out. And then with respect to cremations, the number of cremations per month is limited by the South Coast Air Quality Management District. They have a permit for that. They do not anticipate modifying that to do more cremations. And so with respect to build out, there's a very slight, minimal intensification of use. So the permitted uses that are listed under the specific plan are those uses that support the existing and future uses, such as the cemetery, the mortuary, the crematorium, the crypts, and the other structures, and then ancillary uses, such maybe a flower shop and office uses, water features, and the garden use. As development is being proposed over time, once the specific plan is in place, every development project for that build-out is proposed to be reviewed administratively by staff, and our review would be to ensure that the development that's proposed conforms to the standards within the specific plan. So these exhibits were provided in the staff report, and it shows the existing general plan designation and the proposed change, and also for the change of zone. As discussed in the report, these designations provide for the cemetery and ancillary uses and are appropriate for the existing and the build-out of the site. And so the general commercial designation is one of our more higher intensive commercial uses. And the neighborhood commercial that's being proposed is more of an intermediate use. It's more of a scale of a neighborhood area. And we looked at different designations in this area, and we determined that the neighborhood commercial would work best because it does allow for those ancillary uses, the retail component, the office component. And then the zone change is appropriate because the PCC zone, as it stands today, doesn't actually allow cemetery uses, and so the NBP will take care of that. So here you have the conceptual site plan, and the site plan reflects Forest Lawn's philosophy that a cemetery is not only a resting place for the deceased, but also a place for the living. And the concept plan implements this philosophy by providing a space dedicated to interment, worship, reflection, quiet respect, and reverence. And it's doing this through the placement of the structures. And so what you'll see here is you'll have 1-story and 2-story buildings. The 1-story is in orange, and that's along the perimeter of the site. And the setback requirements would allow the 1st story to be at 15 feet, but at 10 feet, but the 2nd story would have to be set back at 15 feet. The maximum building height would be.
Could I just clarify? The orange is 2-story, not
Yes.
1. Oh, I think you said 1 story.
Yes, it's the 2-story.
Okay.
And it'll have a setback for the 2nd level. The maximum height permitted would be 45 feet. And then the single-story buildings are towards the interior. And then throughout those buildings, there'll be a chapel in that building there. But then in between these buildings, you have these garden areas with water features and more interment sites. And so the quiet spaces are being created through that design that you see there. So the primary access will be provided along Ramon and on the north and Duval on the east. There is also a private street that runs from Duval and to Ramon Road, but this will be extended to the south. You'll see this cul-de-sac that will be created. Vehicle parking is proposed to continue to be provided along the existing parking areas, which is on the north side here, but there is also allowed to be on-street parking. Memorial Drive is a private street, and so there will be parking on the street. The extension of Memorial Drive will also provide for some on-site parking. And that, given that the build-out of that south area at most would add an additional daily service, and that simultaneous services would be limited by Forest Lawn in their scheduling, and that there's only going to be 4 more additional employees, the parking that's proposed would be sufficient to support that project. So the specific plan does have overarching architectural and landscape guidelines to evoke comfort and support while inspiring hope, to be harmonious with existing cemetery structures, while employing state-mandated materials and construction methods to ensure durability, longevity, and public safety. There's also an overall guiding principle that the architecture be timeless and memorial architecture with artistic elements that may include statuary, mosaics, water features, and a variety of interment property. So along with that, with respect to the architecture will be in keeping with the existing forest lawn as far as style and materials. They'll complement and they'll integrate with that, with the existing structures. And these photographs that you see on the slide here, these are all from the site here at Forest Lawn. And these photographs in the middle here, and the one on the bottom showing these interment spaces, those were included in the specific plan to be representative of what we would see as far as architecture in the future. So the design will include multi-level mausoleums, prominent entry designs, arch opening, and building recesses. And the primary building materials will include stucco and concrete. Accent materials may include precast concrete pieces, ceramic tile, marble, steel, or wrought iron. And then the roof materials may be Spanish or flat concrete tiles. And then there's also the incorporation of fencing materials and wrought iron. The specific plan also calls for the incorporation of art. And so what you see here is some of these photos are also from the specific plan, but you're also seeing some of the mosaics and the mural on the structure here on the bottom. Those are also from the Forest Lawn Cathedral City site. And as far as landscaping, the landscape treatments are a blend of plant materials that are complementary to the architecture and to the climate. They are mandating minimum sizes as far as trees and shrub sizes, and there is a master plant palette within the specific plan that features water-efficient plant materials. Did want to speak to conditions that are proposed to be revised. We did transmit to the Planning Commission yesterday evening revised conditions of approval. City staff, planning and engineering met with the applicant's team to go over the conditions that were included in the packet. And based on that discussion, there were several edits that were proposed to be made that is before the commission. And some of those edits had to do with the landscape conditions. So we are proposing to revise or delete some of these conditions as they are either already addressed in the specific plan, apply to parking lots which are not being proposed to be constructed, or are not being created, and are covered elsewhere within the condition. So there was some duplication that it's already covered somewhere else. And then also speaking of revised conditions, the purpose for the revisions that were transmitted is that it's intended to provide some clarity as to the timing in applicability of some of the conditions. For instance, some conditions pertain to the specific plan in general, and some of the conditions are more applicable to each development phase, and so we wanted to provide that clarity. And again, some of these are already addressed in the general plan, and so they weren't, so they're kind of duplicative. But there is a new condition that was proposed, and that was condition 2.2, and that had to do with the requirement that the applicant annex into the city's community facilities district. And this is a standard condition that was inadvertently omitted from the packet that went out. The applicant is in agreement with this condition, as well as the other changes that are included in the revised packet, as is staff. I will clarify, even though it's in the condition, I'll clarify for the record that that annexation into that community facilities district is only applicable to the occupied space, not the entire build-out. So an environmental initial study and mitigated negative declaration was done for the project. It identified that mitigation measures were necessary in the areas of biological resources, cultural resources, and tribal cultural resources. There was a 30-day review period, and we did get 2 comment letters. One was from Riverside County Airport Land Use Commission, basically reiterating that they've already reviewed the project and that it's in conformance with the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan for Palm Springs. And then Riverside County Flood Control and Water Conservation District also provided comments, and their comments were really towards their regulations and their rules. There was a response to comments included in the packet, and it did not identify that any of the comments that were received warranted revisions to the initial study or addition of any new mitigation measures. And so the initial study and mitigate neg deck as presented is appropriate. A mitigation monitoring and reporting program was also included as part of the packet. I did want to take the time at this time to indicate that we did receive comments from one of our commissioners that was a little asked whether the air quality and traffic sections adequately addressed the project, because again, with the thought that the scope of the build-out, when you look at 275,000 square feet of building area, has a correlation and direct impact to how the operations are going to work. Like, is there an intensity of uses or anything like that? And so now that we put on the record that we don't expect more than maybe 1 additional service, 4 new employees, and that the way Forest Lawn also manages the scheduling of services, they make sure that they don't have conflicts, and it's not a standard practice to have simultaneous services. So given all those things, and that traffic that's going to be generated with this project is not that much more, is significantly less than the storage facility that was in place before. And then also that cremations would maintain, stay within stay within what is permitted under the AQMD permit. They're not going to have more cremations creating more or any emissions associated with that. And so based on all these factors and operational considerations, the initial study did adequately address the air quality and traffic impacts, as well as those other topics for consideration within the initial study. With respect to public hearing notice, so we did provide public hearing, and again, because there's a zone change here, it did require a 20-day notice. And then in keeping with our increased notification radius, the mailed notices did go out within 750 feet from the project site. Again, in keeping with the new requirements, it's property owners, occupants, and business owners. The community engagement, because this application was already in place and completed prior to that new ordinance, it didn't require the community engagement meeting, and so that wasn't done. But with respect to the public hearing notice, we didn't receive any comments from any members of the public on the project. And so the recommendation would be for the Planning Commission to adopt the attached resolution recommending that the City Council adopt a mitigated negative declaration pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, and further recommend approval of General Plan Amendment 25-0001 change of zone 25-0001, and specific plan 25-0001, including the revised conditions of approval. And so I do appreciate this time to present the project, and I'm available for any questions, as is the applicant's team.
Thank you. Move to questions for staff. Commissioner Bedard.
Yeah, I think this is great. I'm a big fan of Forest Lawn. I used to lead meditations and labyrinth walks in Glendale. I love the idea of the interactiveness and how you are bringing that in. So it's not just a place for those who passed, but it's a place for those who are still living. And I don't see that represented, though. So I'm curious, because I know in the existing structure, some of the shade, as you know, is an issue for us here in the valley, and there's Queen Anne palms and stuff like that, and I did get the letter that we are going with the Coachella Valley Water District proposals. Are there going to be more shade trees? Does someone spend time in a hallway of mausoleums that's all stone? I don't know what the temperatures can get to in those spaces, but a Queen Anne palm, like what's existing, not such a great thing. Any feedback on that?
So if during the public hearing comments, the applicants can probably speak more
Great.
to that. Yeah.
So then I guess during that public hearing also, I would love to bring up the idea of the art. Forest Lawn is a world-class collector. It would be interesting to hear if they have any plans for that. And then the idea of the interactiveness. Columbarias are very interesting. If we could go to the slide on vegetation. I don't know what a columbaria tree is, though. It says types of, where is it? Not there. Can you go to, it's a different slide.
Oh, you know,
The plant guide,
concept plan
I
talks
think
about
it says columbaria
columbarium
tree under
trees.
landscaping and not
Yes.
structure. Just curious if maybe I just don't know that tree. Gardens, water feature, columbaria trees, benches, landscaping. That's just referring to hardscape with the columbaria tree, correct?
Correct,
Because it's a funeral structure.
correct.
Wanted to make sure I wasn't missing some sort of tree I didn't know.
So,
It's hardscape.
so,
So I could show you an example?
So Commissioner Bedard, throughout these open space areas, landscaping that would be installed would be in keeping with the plant palette that identified various trees.
CVWD?
Yep.
Okay.
Anything further for staff?
No.
Okay. Commissioner.
I'd like to thank you for talking to me on the phone and answering my questions on the initial study and on the events. I have a couple questions for the applicant when they come up, and I had two questions for you, but you answered one of them, and then Commissioner Bedard asked the other. So when the applicant comes up, I'll have like 3 or 4 questions for them.
Vice Chair.
2 questions. So you mentioned that the crematory activities are limited by their current permit with SCAQMD. Are they allowed to change that permit and increase activity?
I believe that they are. They can speak to that. I do know that the intention is not to modify that permit.
Okay, because I'm just wondering if that is the intention, if maybe that should be a condition
I see.
in the conditions of approval. And then can you just clarify, because I know you said 1 story, but I had a little bit of a difficult time in the plans. On the screen, looking at the slide you're on there, the purple wall or structure, and maybe it's a wall with a structure in the center that's along Duval, how tall is that intended to be? I know you said the structures would be 1 story, and I think it says in the plans the walls would be 6, but I'm not clear. Is that a wall with a structure in the center that would be 1 story tall, or is that whole entire section 1 story tall?
Are you talking about the purple?
The purple line, yeah, that's on the
That's
right side, that's along Duval, yes, that whole
a
strip.
single story.
It's single story, but that whole thing, So where are the 6-foot walls? Because I thought maybe that was a wall with a structure in the center. Are the walls the gray that go all the way around?
Did you see reference to a 6-foot wall in the specific plan?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, it said there would be walls that would, and there's actually a photo of a man and a woman, what looked like sort of inside the whole area, and there is what looks like kind of like a 6 or 8 foot wall, certainly not a one-story structure, so I'm just trying to determine, is that where are those walls intended to be? I could probably find it in the,
I'll look into that and follow up. Offhand, I would have to look at the
I
specific.
assumed
plan.
that was actually a lot line wall between the RV park and the cemetery park area, but
those were my 2 questions, so you can move on.
Okay.
I'll find that photo.
Commissioner McPhail.
Yeah, just to confirm a couple of things, a couple of questions. So, we're going to propose a specific plan area here, and one of the reasons for that is that you talked about development surety, but it also means that, as you said, the applicant will not have to return to architectural review or planning commission from this point onward. They will work with staff on the implementation of this project, and if something changes, we will not have an opportunity to review if something has changed. We will be relying on staff to make sure it's complying with our plan.
Well, if there are minor changes, the specific plan builds in that can be also done through the director's review. But if there's changes that are more than minor, then that would come back to the planning commission.
And I think it's labeled at the moment as a draft. So when does it become the plan, and who approves the final plan? We're looking at a draft. So are we approving a draft?
It will become final after the council's action. It will be changed to final with the adoption date.
Got you. You had a slide about the notification process, and I guess I was just a bit disappointed that once again our new policy of notification hasn't yet hit some of our developments. It would be nice if we could have some public, enhanced public notification as we ask for, because I have a small concern in that, as you see on this slide, the areas that are the 2-story buildings in orange here they also are right next to the property to the south and west where there are the RV, Desert Shadows RV resort is. And yes, I imagine those properties each got a notification, but there wasn't any more community engagement. And I wonder, with an RV resort, how many of those people, especially around here, were actually there. I don't know how transient that community is. Do they actually know it's happening? Especially when we have a 2-story building going in right very close to their property. I know we're going to have the second floor step back, but I wonder about shade effects on those specific properties. A community meeting would have been maybe a good way to flesh that out with those particular owners. It's disappointing that that did not happen, even though they don't have to do it. Let's see. What questions do I have? I have some questions maybe about the late-breaking revisions. And I think these are very minor, and maybe it's just me not understanding some of them. For example, 2.2, the one that you mentioned with the Community Facilities District. So that was omitted by mistake, and now it's in. They're annexing into Community Facilities District 20601. How is this property currently covered in terms of police, fire, and other services if they're not already in this facilities district?
So the existing development?
Well, this this condition, they are annexing into a community facilities district.
Correct.
So that means they are not currently in a community's facility.
Correct.
So what are they doing now in terms of fire and
They
those
would pay the
services?
standard impact fees that
Okay.
is subject to all building permits.
Good. Some of the deletions, maybe it's because things are already covered in the SPA, as you mentioned. For example, condition 3.2, there was a condition 3.2 that talked about 50% of all on-site parking shall be shaded, and that was deleted. And I don't know if there's any other reference to shading and parking within the SPA, but I noticed that was deleted for some reason. I would hope and assume we are going to be doing shading somewhere for their parking, but it was removed from the conditions for some reason. I wasn't sure why.
So that condition related more to the parking, to parking spaces, right? And so there isn't a parking lot being created, but there are some on-street parking, and so that would be covered by parkway trees?
Okay.
Yeah.
Condition 4.14, and this is probably, again, something like that. There was an old 4.142 that referred to the owner being responsible for blow, sand, and debris removal in various locations such as gutter pans, sideways, and parkways, and that was removed. Is that covered somewhere else, that they are going to be doing these things?
That's
Yes.
typical of all your conditions of approval you see out of Public Works. They have that standard condition that they're responsible for all that maintenance.
But I think that one, if I read the document correctly, was removed. If it was 4.142.
No, 4.141 is being proposed to be deleted, but the subsequent condition does have the requirement for the blow sand.
Okay, maybe I
Read and
thought
trash.
that was being
Yeah.
removed then, and it's not. Okay, thank you.
All right. Sure.
Just real quick, so that the applicant has a chance to look at it before the public comment period. Page 24 in the specific plan has the heights and has the development standards. So all it says for height is it says building height 45 feet, and then it says wall/fence height 8 feet. So it does not say anything about 1 stories, 2 stories. I mean, it has setbacks, but it just says building height 45 feet. So I think there's some clarification that's needed there. And then page 26 is where I saw the photo, and obviously this is not a photo of a real place because it doesn't exist right now, but I'm just curious, is that essentially representative of an 8-foot wall that you see in the photo on page 26? Since it doesn't appear to be a building. Thank you.
Thank you. And first of all, just addressing the 2-story buildings, which are sort of wrap around on 3 sides of the lot. Do we know what the actual purpose of those buildings will be?
Yes. They're mausoleum and columbariums.
So, but it will be a 2-story building?
They're interment areas. Mhm.
Okay. And we have that as a maximum of 45 foot for the build-out, 40-foot height, 45 feet height. Typically, if we were doing a 2-story building, like a house, we'd be at 26 feet. In RR, we would go up to maybe 50 feet for a 3-story building. So I'm just trying to understand why that height for this particular development.
Right. So the zone, the commercial zone district, like the PCC zone that it was currently is, allows up to 36 feet for
Right.
commercial. Mhm. So I just want to clarify, it's not 26, it's 36, because I thought I heard 26.
Oh, no, I said if we were looking at a 2-story building in a residential area, we'd be
yes.
at 26 feet.
Correct.
36 in commercial, but we're at 45 here, so.
Correct.
This is, even with the setback, that's quite a large building to look at, say, from the RV resort area. So I'm wondering why it's so tall.
So that's the height the applicant's proposing to accommodate their uses. And so
Okay.
they can speak more to that as far as that height.
I
Yeah.
can ask them, yeah. So with those uses, there will not be any windows facing out from that building, I guess, looking out over the RV resort. So nothing to the south or the west.
Yeah. The final detailed architectural plans are still to be developed.
Okay.
But we can talk through that, through this process with the applicants to determine whether there's any viewing areas. But when you look at the what's there now, you don't see a lot of windows. You'll see, at the ground floor, you'll see openings and arches and things of like that nature.
Yeah, I'm really looking to how this impacts the RV resort's privacy, because we're going from single story with the self-storage to a 45-foot tall building. It's a large mass increase for those residents. I noticed in the revisions we received last night, one of the things that had apparently been in there and I hadn't noticed, but it was removed, so now I did, was a mention of Quimby. Is this project going to be subject to Quimby or impact fees?
It is subject to impact fees.
Okay,
The Quimby fees are applicable to residential development, but there is a parkland fee that's assessed at the time of the building permit, but the Quimby itself is residential.
okay, all right. I noted at 3.2M in the revision that it deletes information related to lush and efficient landscape gardening, but I'm assuming that the other existing conditions still rely on that for the source of the planting.
Yeah, so the plant palette that's in the specific plan, the majority of those plants that are being proposed are within that guidebook, but the specific plan would identify the plants that would be used, the plant species that would be used. Additionally, when landscape plans come in, they are reviewed by staff and then the water district, and the water district would review it to ensure that it's in compliance with water efficiency, and so it'll be reviewed in that manner.
Okay. I think my other questions are better answered by the applicant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have one other question for staff that I didn't ask. Normally, I don't think a legislative action has conditions of approval, but, but it does. So I'm just curious if the conditions of approval, once the city council approves the specific plan and they approve the specific plan, will the conditions of approval be attached to the specific plan so that when people come in and look at the specific plan or future planners 5 years from now, they're looking at the specific plan, they'll see the conditions of approval?
So yes, they'll be attached to the specific plan.
That's great.
All right, thank you. Okay. So now move to open the public hearing. Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak?
Chair Lee, we do have the applicant team, and I do believe they want to speak.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening,
evening.
Chair Lee and commission members. My name is Dennis Madison. I'm the Senior Vice President of Architecture and Engineering at Forest Lawn. I'd like to begin by thanking Interim Director Molina and Director Corella and the city staff for their guidance and hard work in bringing this specific plan forward. We truly appreciate the collaborative process and the thoroughness of the staff review over these past several months. Forest Lawn looks forward to having this specific plan in place so we can move ahead with the phased cemetery build-out of the parcel that previously operated as a public storage. This will allow us to provide needed cemetery spaces to the city's residents and surrounding communities in a manner consistent with Forest Lawn's architectural standards and the city's approved design guidelines. We've been here serving the city residents since 2005. Hard for me to believe that 20 years has passed, quite honestly. And this plan will allow us to continue doing so for many, many years to come. So we respectfully request adoption of the resolution before you. And as Sandra and others have said, we have the whole team here. So happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I know we're going to have questions from all the commissioners, and certainly your team are welcome to come up and assist in answering.
Yeah, I'm certainly our chief architect, Brian, will be involved, I'm sure.
All right, good, thank you. Let me start with Commissioner Malakoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a few questions about the operations. So first, so in the existing north area, you're going to get a lot larger. And in the existing north area, there's a hand washing place for religious people. Is it going to be a second hand washing place for the people that come down to the new area?
I mean, that certainly can be incorporated. It's not, I mean, to be determined is how we're going to phase this out. It'll probably be in at least 4 phases in the south area. It could be more. Kind of depends on really the community, what the community needs, what the community desires, because we do try to tailor our interment options to what the community is asking for.
It's just something to keep in mind, like,
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
it's a
that's-
long
that's
distance from
certainly
where
not a problem. Yeah.
the existing hand washing station is.
Okay.
If you were to walk down to the mausoleums in the new parcel. So just something to think about.
Okay.
So when the chair was asking you about the mausoleum's height that goes around the perimeter, so most of the existing mausoleums in your current facility are just stacked 3 high, or maybe 4?
No, there's 6 at least. I mean, Brian can talk to that.
Yeah, we have a 2-story structure in our existing. It's an indoor-outdoor structure, and actually from the bottom of that to the top of
Sir,
the
please speak into the microphone. I'm sorry, we are streaming online. Thank you.
Yes, my name's Brian Emerson. I'm the chief architect at Forest Lawn. And we've paid a lot of attention to architecture. We have a 100-year history at Forest Lawn with art and everything. So, but to answer your question about the 2-story building, we do have a 2-story structure on the existing property. It's an indoor-outdoor structure, so it's not enclosed. And the second floor of that has breezeways and openings. But the top, we have kind of a turret in the middle of it, and the top is at 45 feet. So we thought if we were to replicate that, we wanted that. That's why the 45 feet comes with. As far as the floor-to-floor height, our typical floor-to-floor height is about 18 feet because we have potentially 7 high crypts at 2'5". So if you do the math and the floor height, so we had 18 and 19, and 19 is 38, and we're planned to have a tile roof here and not just have a flat roof. So that's how we got up with the 45 feet.
It's been a while since I've been there, so I thought they were only 3 high. So you're saying that the new ones will go, since they're going to be up to 40 feet?
No, well, it's not a single elevation. It's on the 2 stories, but at the existing park, all of them are 6 high, and in the building, it's 6 high. Yeah.
Okay, so if you were doing a mausoleum or a columbarium,
Columbarium.
the columbarium is much smaller, but for
Yeah.
the mausoleum, if it goes up to six high, so if somebody is standing there, at what level within the 40 feet would the top crypt be?
You wouldn't be looking at, you wouldn't be purchasing, it would be 6 high on the first floor, or 7 high, and 7 high on the second floor. So you would only be, let's say, 18 feet away from the upper floor. Let's say you were buying on the top row of crypts, you would be 15 or 18 feet away from that.
But you'd still be standing on the sidewalk in front.
You could be, but if you were standing on the sidewalk, you'd probably own property on the first level, and if you own property on the second level, you'd be on at the second level. But I don't.
So, I don't know, maybe I'm just not understanding. So if you're on the second level,
Yes.
you're gonna walk up to the second level?
Yes.
And it's currently that way now?
Yes.
Okay.
We have staircases. Yeah. Leading up to the second level of our building.
I misunderstood that part, but I understand it now. So it won't be somebody looking up 25 feet to see
No,
what's
no.
happening. Okay, so that's good.
And just to let you know that the different levels is actually very advantageous for our families because it provides price points that people can buy. So the lower levels are obviously people pay more for those, and the more affordable ones are up high. So we like to have affordable properties for all of our families, and that provides a nice level of availability for all of our community. So.
Okay, thank you. And I have some questions about the operations, so I think this gentleman might be able to answer them. So when I read through the initial study, so I was concerned about intensity. So I understand that the intensity of the use really isn't going to change. So as I understand it, most of the people that are going to be generated to come to Forest Lawn is going to be based on the chapel, which isn't changing. And that has an occupancy of, I don't know, 120 maybe. But I'm concerned about, when more than one event happens, so I just want to have a better comfort level for that. So as I understand it, I didn't think you'd have up to 10 people watching a cremation. I mean, when I was there last, there was only like 3 or 4 chairs there. But so maybe the largest one that you've had 10 people there. And then when you unveil a crypt, typically, how many people show up to that? Because that could happen at the same time as having 75, 85 people in the chapel.
Correct. So just to get back to your initial question, and for the record, John Abel, Park Vice President in Cathedral City, we typically tailor our services, the structure and scheduling, alternating time zones. So if we schedule a 10 a.m. for a family, we typically will schedule the next one at 12 or 1. So they're not operating simultaneously, not only for the family's privacy, but also for parking considerations and things like that.
So you would try not to have something going on at the cremation or the mausoleum at the same time as you were having a service in the chapel?
Correct, ideally. And now, we do have families that will come in for arrangements, but those are typically 2-3 individuals that are coming in addition to the services that we have. You asked about the cremation area as well, and yeah, usually that's a rough estimate, 10 people or so is what we will.
That's probably the
normally
highest.
see. That's a pretty high number, yeah, it's a pretty high number.
Okay, so that gives me a little bit more better feeling for the environmental study that was done, so I appreciate you answering those questions. Then the other thing that I wanted to know that has to do with the facility, the services that you're going to be offering. So if you're going to go from the 3 a day that you have now to maybe 4 a day, so how do you see how early the first one will be and how late the last one will be? Because most of the time when I've come to a number of services, and it's usually always like at 10 o'clock.
Sure, yeah, especially out here with the heat, we try to temper that so that our early services will start around 9 or so. We have our witness cremations that can start as early as 8:30. And again, those are staggered so that families are arriving at different times. The latest service, especially during the summer that we'll have, is usually around 12, again, because of the heat. So,
And how late in the afternoon would you go?
we can have evening visitations. Right now, we're slotted up until 8 or 9 p.m. And again, those are for evening visitations within our chapels. So that wouldn't be within the cemetery grounds.
Okay, and then the last question I have is when When the family comes for the cremation, do they stay the whole time, or do they just like have a small service for 10 minutes and then leave?
Exactly, yeah. We allot our families up to about 20 minutes or so. They're welcome to view their loved one and spend some time. Sometimes there's a very short religious ceremony that's involved, but they're not allowed to stay for the duration of the cremation.
Oh, okay, so they can't stay for, I mean, my next question was going to be like, how long does it take to finish the cremation? But they can't stay for the whole thing. It's like 10 or 15 minutes and then they're gone.
Correct, they can. Some families, if they are concerned about the time or want to say a prayer, we'll let them know roughly the approximate time the cremation will finish. Obviously, that's going to be dependent on a number of factors, but cremations can range from...
How long does it take to finish that process?
It depends on a number of factors. It can range from 2 hours to 3.5.
Okay,
4.
that's what I was curious about. Well, thank you for answering those questions. I appreciate it. Now, I'm not as concerned about the intensity, because that's a big thing for the environmental review, that we need to make sure that it's not increasing in intensity. So I have a better comfort level. Thank you.
Great.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Bedard?
So just to bring up some of the questions that I had earlier, but I do want to piggyback on the idea that was brought up with the height of the building, that is this back of the building that's being suggested, is it just a flat wall that's facing into the RV park?
No, we've taken a lot of consideration for that. So
Get to the,
Oh,
you gotta get to the mic.
my name is Brian Emerson. Again, I'm the chief architect. We've taken a lot of consideration on the southern and western property lines. So currently there's a 15-foot swale that has some mesquite trees in it, and we're going to maintain that. But the first level is going to come up, and then we're going to set back the second level 5 feet, and we're going to actually have a tile roof in that 5-foot section. So that'll add some material there. And then on the first and second level, we're going to have breezeways, which will probably start at about 6 feet above our finished floors. So we won't be able to view into the RV park, Shadow Hills, but we will allow breezeways, the light to come in, and also just create voids and spaces on our elevation. So it will not be a blank wall. And then the top floor also be a tiled roof. And we'll probably incorporate some elements like pilasters like we have in the existing structure now. So it's still to be developed, but like I said, we have a 100-year history of architecture and art, and we take it very seriously. And so we're really looking forward to creating a beautiful building here.
Great, now my fun questions. So being more interactive in that space, like the Labyrinth in Glendale, those types of things, I know you already do events, your Dias de los Muertos, all that type of stuff. But for the actual people in the moment in the space, how is it interactive?
Well, I would say we have currently the columbarium trees you mentioned are kind of a vision of ours. We haven't done them in any of our parks yet, but they're going to be metal structures, very art structures, I guess, in the shape of modern trees. At the base of them will be columbariums, probably 6 to 8, potentially 10 high, and then they will provide shade. And even we're looking at possibly the trees being kinetic at the top, so that they would move with the sun and the winds and things. So again, providing a garden setting that's interactive. We also have a water feature or some kind of cooling area or fountain area that is in the center on axis with a large staircase. So we feel we're going to provide landscaping and elements. We don't have anything planned like the Labyrinth yet, but those kind of things are possible. And in terms of engagement, though, we have a current development going on right now along Duval, and on that development, we're going to be installing 5 mosaic that are currently being fabricated in Italy. And so the engagement of our visitors will be with the art, of course, and with the mosaics and those kinds of things. So we think that will provide the interactivity on that level.
Just as a thought, there is such a thing as a unicursal labyrinth, which is very different from the Chartres. So it's a pathway, basically, that could be explored. And this is a continuation of multi-faiths being represented within the cemetery, correct?
Yes,
Great.
yeah.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks. Vice Chair Mead.
Hi. So I think it's a little bit difficult just because you were just describing kind of how you're envisioning those exterior walls to be, what those buildings are going to look like. There's very little in this plan that shows that. And so I think we're all just trying to get an understanding of what is this going to look like? Because, I mean, if I was in Los Angeles and someone proposed a 45-foot building, to me, that's 4 stories. That's a big building. That's very tall. And so, you know, I feel like it's being masked a little bit by saying it's 2 stories when it's 45 feet. And so it's just hard for me to envision how, like, I think a lot of the photos we saw and the designs look very majestic, but it also seems very fortress-like to me. And I think going back to Commissioner Bedard's comments at the very beginning, you know, I've been to the Hollywood, Forest Lawn, and the Glendale. They're very open. They're more like our cemetery district across the street. Flatter, lots of greenery. You can see the flowers. You can see when people are gathering at a grave. This is very enclosed. From the street side, it's going to be tall walls that is very enclosed. You're not going to be able to see the inside. You won't be able to see the green. There's a lot of discussion in the plan about vistas. There won't be any vistas from the outside, and from the inside, you're not going to have any vistas because they're 45 feet tall walls in many places. So I think I'm just curious about obviously it's your design and architecture, but I'm just curious, why did you go that way as opposed to something that is more kind of open and airy and vista-like?
Well, this is much different than our Hollywood Hills Park or our Covina Parks, which are 400 acres. I mean, this is 10 acres, so the scale is much different. And the existing, you know, cemetery was built before we purchased it. And so it has a certain scale. But as far as we're trying to open up, you were mentioning the 1-story building along Duval. I mean, that's intended to be an arcade, actually, that 10-foot slot. And I would love to have it just be a 3-foot high wall, but state law requires that a cemetery be enclosed with a 6-foot high fence for the protection of our loved ones and our families. So that wall will have to be at least 6 foot high. It might be iron and open up, but we're trying to open up to Duval as much as possible, and the corner at Duval and our private roadway. And as far as vistas go, as you walk along the second floor, it's an indoor-outdoor experience. So in between where you have a sanctuary between wall crypts, where the end wall, which will be, I guess, our perimeter wall, like I said, well, that might cap off at 6 feet. And since we have an 18-foot fuller floor, we have 12 feet now of openness. And so you can see the mountains in the background. If you're looking to the west, you can see it's a southern. So we're going to be providing those kind of vistas a lot in the park. And even when you're on the first floor, the same thing. We'll have vistas up, like clear story windows, like a lot. And on the inside face of these, the orange buildings is all a colonnade. So it's all open. There's no walls on those structures. So again, well, there might be a few walls for seismic, but it's going to be an open colonnade along those perimeters. And we have a grand staircase that's kind of centered on the turnabout. And again, on the western wall of that, as you come up the staircase, we're going to have an opening like we talked about, and then you'll see the mountains. So we think it'll be uplifting walking up that staircase. And so I know there's not those kind of details in the specific plan. We're thinking of those, and we need to get the specific plan approved before we can start really looking at those things.
Okay, yeah, I think that's why it's just a little difficult for me personally, just because the only photo that I have to go by is that one photo of the couple on page 24, where they basically look like they're enclosed in on all sides. It's very dark, it's very shadowy, there are no vistas. So without me having a better understanding, like what you explained to Commissioner Malakoff was really helpful in understanding that the second floor is going to be more open, and what you were just saying about openness at the end, there's nothing in here that indicates that.
Yeah.
And so I guess where I'm struggling a little bit is, by adopting a specific plan, the guidelines in here are very vague and very general. You're giving us a lot of detail, but based on what's in this specific plan, you could change your mind completely. And you could do something totally different than what you're describing here, and it's just going to go through the Director of Economic Development. So we're not going to have another chance to see what you actually end up doing. We're just taking your word for it now. And I'm not saying you're not telling us the truth, but I'm saying plans change, right? You guys could decide to do something different. And so since a lot of those details you're giving us are not in the specific plan, it's just hard to say I have a good understanding of what this is going to end up looking like and what we're giving you permission to do.
Well, I think what Sandra said, that we can't dramatically change. I mean, we can't build a 90-story building, for example.
Correct.
And so there are actually pretty specific guidelines we have to follow. We're very regulated also by the state as far as our buildings have to be type 1 construction, poured-in-place concrete. So as far as durability and quality materials, fire life and safety, this is going to be a top-notch facility. And like I said, I think actually one of the photographs in the Pacific Island shows of the building at 45 feet here. So again, we're going to have similar type of architecture. It's going to have openings, and we're going to try to be contiguous, and we're not going to do an about face and come in with a Mies van der Rohe modern structure or anything.
Yeah, and I'm not claiming you are. I'm just saying we're being asked to basically approve a plan that is very vague in terms of the details. You're giving us lots of great details now, but none of that was in the plan that we reviewed. So can you just clarify for me, because my concern is really the wall. I'm also concerned with the south wall that's up against the park, but the wall along Duval, because that is what you're going to see as you're driving down the street on that main thoroughfare. How you're saying that's going to be one story. So if 2 stories could be 45 feet, how tall is 1 story?
That actually, since it's not going to have wall crypts in there, so that's, I don't have it's going to be less than 15 feet high. And it's going to have a tiled roof. It's going to be, I kind of envision it like an arcade, like you'd be walking in a psychology building at USC, where it has a beautiful arcade around it or something. So that's what it's going to be like. We're going to have to solve the issue of having the required 6-foot wall that the state requires. But so that wall along Duval, it's going to be 15 feet high.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner McPhail.
Well, the vice chair's asked a few questions that I was about to ask as well in relation to really the south and west portion of the 2-story buildings as they relate to the RV park. And it would have been helpful, I think, in the document, even though it would not have been the final appearance of the building, to have some kind of artist's impression of what it looks like. I mean, you're describing it to us, but it would have been really helpful, I think, for us visually to see what does that south and west building look like and how it relates to the various properties in the RV park. In your 45-foot analysis, did you do any shades? Is it going to cast shade on the RV park? Is that going to be an issue?
Well, I think that since the RV park is south of us, I don't think we might provide, there might be a little bit morning sun coming from, but I think the shade won't be coming from that direction, no.
Okay.
The shade will be going up your screen, up to the north, so.
Do you, I know you'll get this approved and everything, but do you foresee maybe some more communication with the RV park as you get to go along, that you will be saying, we're going to be doing this plan, and invite them to see what you're going to do?
Well, I mean, we can have John address that, but we have a very good relationship with the RV park.
Good.
And the last thing we would want to do
Yeah.
is upset them, and we're good neighbors. That's
Good.
what we intend to be, but he can speak to more specifics.
Yeah, we've had a long-standing relationship with the RV park for over 20 years now, so it's been good not only with the management team there, but also with the residents. We've never had any issues, thankfully, so I'm proud to
So
say that.
your impression is they are aware that something is going to be happening? I know that they've had a postcard in the mail, but you've had some interaction perhaps with them?
Not myself personally,
Yeah.
but yeah, I know we did make them aware, and as far as I know, nothing came of that, so.
I guess I'm just a bit shy about the RV park, because there's another RV park not too far from here that's had some concerns about another development. I just want to make sure they're plugged in at this point, because that one has been a big issue for us. So thank you.
All right. So let me go back to some basics of what you were saying. Earlier you said that it would likely be a 4-phase development.
It hasn't entirely been determined, but I think that's pretty likely. It could be more.
Okay.
Could be 6.
I know that we approved a small addition some time ago. That's
Well, the
that
one under
sort of
construction right
orange in
now
the-
is in the north side in the
Yeah.
magenta. there.
Yeah. Is that operational yet?
It's very close to being done. It's probably about 6 to 8 weeks from completion.
And how many spaces does that add for you?
Roughly, do you remember, Brian? Like 1,600? or something?
1,600, yeah. about.
There's some lawn crypts in there for our families that prefer that. So that takes up, that's not quite as dense.
Right, okay. I'm just trying to understand, and I know that you haven't got the design for the southern part, so we can't be specific, but in those 4 phases, how long do you think it will be until all spaces in the
Are built out.
complete plan are built out?
Until the entire thing is built out?
Yep,
20 years-ish,
okay.
yeah. Maybe longer. It kind of depends on the demand that we have. That's why we don't want to build a lot of property that we have to maintain that isn't needed. So that's why we phase it.
Okay. So let's assume that, the first phase that you do is going to last for 4 or 5 years, if we're doing four phases. So
Yeah.
what's going to be happening with the rest of the property? Is it simply going to be screened off and left, or what are you going to
Be
do
some
with it?
screening, but no, it will be kept in good condition. We have the current perimeter buildings in place. I don't know, we haven't, our intention is not to demolish those until we're, ready to do those parts of the southern parcel.
Okay, I just,
Yeah, I
again,
mean, we're very cognizant of that. We wouldn't have our families come in to a beautiful new development with a bunch of trash and poor-looking things right next door. So, yeah,
When-
those will be maintained. We have, in the plan, we have extensive, some infiltration galleries that we have to install in and around that area. So some of those improvements, my sense is that we'll be doing those initially before we get into the actual development of the property, as well as fulfilling some of the covenants that we have
Okay.
to do.
so I just want to understand that, it's not going to look like a 20-year building site to people on Duval.
No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
All right. Then you're not, essentially all you're doing is adding spaces, is what I'm hearing you say, because you're not increasing the rate of,
Yeah, I think of it as, and of course, we've done this at all of our properties. We've master planned at many of them. The intensity really doesn't increase. The fact that we have more spaces doesn't cause more death. It's simply extending the life of the property so that we have those spaces for the community when needed.
and Sandra mentioned earlier that the crematorium itself is limited by its permit.
It is.
What is the annual number of cremations in the permit?
AQMD regulates by month. Our permits are, it's approximately 200 a month that we can do.
Okay,
That's
so-
combined, we have 2 units.
Okay, so you've got 2 retorts or?
2.
Yeah, okay.
And the permit conditions are tied together.
And you don't have any permits or any possibility of adding retorts or enlarging the crematorium?
No, we would never add another retort there. There would be no need.
Okay, all right,
We're going to have to replace them at some point in the future, but.
sure. All right. Great, thank you. I think that's all my questions. Anything further from the commission?
I forgot to ask that when I was, so if you did want to increase the number of cremations a day, are you able to amend that permit that you have to increase it?
Well, I mean, you could file for an amendment to the South Coast, I suppose, yeah. I think
let's
they
say
do have a
you-
process where you could ask for it, but remember, they're doing their limits for public notification and all those types of things, and the operational capacity limits, that's what that's where that calculation comes from, where they get where they cap our
Okay, so
operation.
if-
So I don't think we would be able to.
You would have to have environmental review if you're amending the permit.
Yeah,
And you don't
and
need to.
they have their own environmental review process,
Okay.
of course, and
I just want to make sure there would be some sort of public notification and
absolutely.
a public, okay, thank you, that's all I wanted to know.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Well, continuing on what Vice Chair Mead was saying, so I'm not saying you're going to do this, but my assumption, based on what I read in the specific plan, is that you're going to stick with the air quality, South Coast air quality permit that you have. But if you were to put in another cremation facility or expand the use, you would, of course, have to get approval from South Coast.
yeah.
But I would hope that that would be a change, and maybe this is more of a question for our interim director, that if they were to do that, I would think that that would kick in a specific plan amendment. Now, we probably wouldn't have to do an environmental review on it because the South Coast Air Quality would do that. But it would be definitely, if they were put in a second cremation facility, that would be an increase in intensity that's not covered in the current specific plan.
You're saying an additional cremation facility?
Or doing more than what the South Coast Air Quality District permits you to do now.
We would be in violation of our permit if we did that.
Yeah, and it's not part of the project, so it wasn't analyzed, so you would be coming back.
But my question is if you were to expand that permit, I would think then the specific plan would need to be changed also.
Well,
Because it's based on what the South Coast gives them now.
so the South Coast Air Quality District regulates the use of the crematorium, and it limits, right, it has a approximately 200 a month cremation limit. So if, I mean, this is, we're talking theoretical, but, so we would look at it like we would any other application that came in. If an application came in and they wanted to make a change, we would do an assessment to determine, is that change a significant change that merits a higher level review, or is that an administrative change that can be done by staff level? But what we look at, again, what we're looking at here, how much of an intensification would a third crematorium or third permit create?
But we're trying to, I guess the thing that's of concern here is we're giving up a lot of our approval authority for this expansion. And when I say giving up, I mean just the review authority. We're not getting anything. But traditionally, planning commissions like to review things. So we're delegating that authority to staff. So in my mind, I read somewhere in one of the studies or somewhere that everything is based on the permit that they have now from South Coast Air Quality District. So my question is, if they were to change the parameters of the South Coast Air Quality permit, then even if they were to approve it over in Diamond Bar, where the South Coast Air Quality people are, that then they wouldn't be, even if they were to approve it, they're not going to be consistent with what the city council will approve when they see it, and what we're going to recommend approval. So I want to know, I guess I want a better comfort level to know that if they're going to change the parameters of what services they're offering through the specific plan, then they need to come back and get that approved.
If I may, I'm Siobhan Cooney, Land Use Council for Forest Lawn. There's the project before the Planning Commission and ultimately, hopefully, the City Council did not analyze or propose any increase in cremation or changes to the air district permit. So if there were going to be any changes which are not proposed and not needed, they would go through the process with the air district and they would not be covered by the M&D and the analysis that's
specific
before you, because it's not being requested, it's not proposed, it wasn't analyzed. So there would be additional review.
So for our attorney, do you agree with that conclusion that if they were to change the parameters of what we're assuming tonight, they'd have to come back? Even if a state agency said, yes, you can do this, you meet our requirements, they still have to come back and get our approval.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to clarify as staff is that it might not need commission approval. It might just need some sort of ministerial approval through staff. But that doesn't mean that there's going to be any kind of lack of review, if that makes sense.
No, I'm not saying that, but if the parameters change for what the level of service that they're offering, so what you're saying is that could be an administrative decision, and I'm saying that I don't think then it would be consistent with the specific plan, and the staff can't approve an amendment to the specific plan.
Not whether it's an amendment to the specific plan, whether it conforms to the requirements of the specific plan. So if the change is minor or whether the change is substantial, that's what's going to guide our next steps internally. But that isn't what's being proposed, and so that's just not what's proposed even in our specific plan. But even the permitted uses in the specific plan don't say 2 crematoriums, right? Like it just says that the permitted use includes a crematorium or a crematory. So
I think, at least for me, where I'm getting hung up is that it says in the specific plan that there's no anticipated increase. And you're saying there's no anticipated increase. Nope. And that's fine. But just because there's no anticipated increase now doesn't mean there won't be an increase later when you're talking about over a 20-year span, right? I'm just trying to plan for the future, because we're basically saying we're approving this plan, and whatever happens that falls within this plan now becomes a ministerial approval. So I think I'm trying to think ahead and think through all the details, and if we're being asked to approve an MND that specifically says that air quality is not a concern at all because they're not expecting to increase their crematorium, that study's not being done, right? So if they do then decide to do it, then the whole MND means that wasn't actually studied as part of it, like you were saying, and so therefore, to me, then it becomes somewhat null and void.
And
potentially,
if I could, I think there's two things that we look at, right? So let me back up. So the specific plan does include specific plan amendments, what would constitute minor, that would be under staff level review. And it talks about not more than 5% to structure area, alter points of access into the specific plan, modify traffic movement on arterial, secondary or collector street systems, reduce open areas by more than 5%, or change development standards beyond what would be permitted by the zoning on the property. So these are the type of amendments that would fall under a minor. So we are looking at, if Forest Lawn came in and wanted to make a change, does it fall under these minor amendment provisions? Yes or no, right? So yes, it would be reviewed by staff. If not, it would go to the Planning Commission. But the second aspect that we would look at when we get amendments is we're also looking at CEQA, right? So you'll see some projects that they're environmentally exempt. You've seen some amendments where we're doing findings of consistency with the environmental document that was prepared. So, and since we're talking about a third permit for cremations, we would be also, when we get a project that's being amended, we look at the CEQA that was done. So we'll look at, the air quality, we would look at the traffic, we would look at these various aspects, and how does this amendment significantly change the determinations that were made? So there may need to be a technical amendment that's done that looks through at this air quality. There may or may not be, depending on that level of intensity. So these are two things that kind of go together when we look at amendments. And so when we go through that analysis, or if we went through that analysis, and we're seeing that there may need to be some alterations to that environmental document, even under CEQA, it allows us to look at what level of environmental document that change needs to be. And it still allows, if it's administrative and it's not substantial warranting, a new environmental document, it still allows for staff level review.
Well, Mr. Chair, can I go? I understand what you just said, but what I'm having concerns about is a lot of okay, let me take a step back. A lot of specific plans provide very, very detailed standards for what's allowed and provide elevations in landscape plans. And we're not doing that, and I understand that. So when I talked to you on the phone, my idea was that what they're going to do is stick with the theme of what they already have and not deviate from that very much. So I'm good with that. And then, given the level of use, I was thinking that what we're seeing now is what, this is going to be like a snapshot in time as to what they're describing and what they're going to have. And if they're going to change that snapshot, then the specific plan needs to be changed. And I don't think that that's administrative. So, we were talking about the cremation facility and if they put in a second one, but let's change that. So let's say 5 or 7 years from now, I don't think any of us will be on the commission anymore, but maybe I'm wrong. But 5 or 7 years or 10 years from now, let's say they want to put it in another chapel on the south side that can fit another 90 people. And then they're going to have 2 services with 90 people at the same time. You're saying that, probably that the director would say that would need a specific plan amendment, but we're not sure. So what I'm saying is that the specific plan is describing what they're going to do and the level of service they're going to provide. And I think if they're going to deviate from that, that would not be an administrative decision. Because a legislative action can't be approved administratively or by us even.
Correct. So none of that would happen at a staff level. That doesn't mean that a legislative action is occurring. It just means that staff is analyzing a document and applying what is in that document to the facts at hand. What I will say, and I will obviously give, the team here a chance to kind of respond, but this is a recommendation. So staff and the team are recommending to provide this form of an amendment in the specific plan. If a majority of the Planning Commission wants to identify for City Council that you do not agree with this form of amendment, that is absolutely fine, and we can relay that to the City Council. But this is what's being proposed by staff and by the team for your consideration.
And I understand that. I think what's important here is that the City Council is depending on us to look at all of the details so that they look at the policy issues when they take action on this, and the nuts and bolts they're assuming that we looked at. So I want to have, and don't get me wrong, I think Forest Lawn is a great part of Cathedral City, and you do great things here. You provide community services. The Forest Lawn people are very active in the community. So don't get me wrong, I'm not against anything. But I want to make sure that if future changes are made that are contrary to what's in the specific plan now, that those would come back to the Planning Commission and City Council. And I'm not hearing anything that says if they were to add something that changes the intensity of the use, that it would come back.
May I make a suggestion, Siobhan Cooney? I've been conferring with the Forest Lawn team, and we're hearing a lot of concern about potential increased intensity, particularly with regard to cremations and what's existing. And I understand, you're hearing the team saying that's not anticipated to change, but looking for more reassurance. And Forest Lawn's willing to volunteer a condition that they would coordinate with the city planning director in the event of a proposed increase to the number of monthly cremations allowed under the existing South Coast Air Quality Management District permits to determine whether the city will require any additional review or an amendment to the specific plan.
Okay, that is good, but I would add one more thing to it and make sure that our attorney agrees with this condition of approval. Besides the cremations, that if they were to change any of the building's usage beyond what's there now. So like if they were to change the mausoleum to one of the mausoleum buildings to a chapel, or change any of the land uses that are being proposed now to something else, that should also kick in the change.
Sorry, I'm not sure I'm following.
Okay, so
Within the cemetery, the specific plan allows cemetery-related uses.
right, but if you were to okay, this is an extreme change, but let's say on the south property, you change one of the mausoleum buildings to another chapel that fits 90 people. I want to know that that is not going to be done administratively and that it would be done through a specific plan amendment. So what I'm saying is that I think you're moving in the right direction, but I just would add something to address a change of one of the buildings.
So the specific plan regulates the overall amount of development. And for something like a chapel that's occupiable square footage, there's a very limited amount of that kind of development
I agree.
that's allowed.
That's why I'm saying that if you were to change one of the mausoleums to another office or change one of the mausoleums to a chapel building, what I'm saying is if you add on to the language next to the cremation, that a change in building use would also have to come back.
So I think we would agree that if Forest Lawn got to a point at build-out where they were going to exceed the development that's covered in the specific plan, like if, I think it's 12,000 square feet of occupiable square footage, if they needed to do more than that, that would require approval.
I think that's where I'm going. And I hope everybody if everybody agrees, yes. That kind of condition, I think, would give me more comfort level of delegating it to an administrative review because what I'm trying to say, other than the cremations, is, right now we have this slide up that shows six buildings that aren't really for, they're for to be a crypt or a columbarium. And if they were to change to anything else, contrary to this sheet, then that would come back.
So let me just ask if you can propose wording that Forest Lawn is comfortable with and ensure that staff is also comfortable with it. We'll add that as an additional condition.
Just one clarification, though, because our understanding is that this is already covered. The cremations, I understand, is a new issue because there's no change proposed, but we understand that's a concern.
Okay.
But what we're talking about now in terms of exceeding square footage amounts or changing the amount of what's approved under the specific plan, that's already covered in the proposed specific plan implementation procedures, which require a specific plan amendment for certain types of changes to the specific plan, and that would be covered.
What page is that on?
This is on page 35, section 5C. And section 5 is administration and implementation.
Could I have staff comment on that?
So I'm trying to pull it up. I don't know why it's not showing on, but yes, we were just agreeing that that condition is, as far as like the occupational space, it's already covered
Okay.
in, it would be a repetitive
Right.
issue as far as like a condition of approval. So I agree with council for the team.
So going back to Forest Lawn, the amendment that you were suggesting, if we can get the wording?
On the
on the
cremations?
Yes.
Yeah, and also, I'm in the specific plan now. Can you let me know what page that you were referring to so I can look at it before we say that's okay?
Sure. Page 35,
Okay.
section 5C, which addresses specific plan amendments. And it distinguishes between what's a minor amendment and then what needs to go through a full process.
So what's the definition of substantially conforms?
Do you wanna-
No, so that literally would just be determined on a case-by-case basis, and it does provide, sorry if I may, examples, for example, modify traffic on arterial, secondary, or collector streets, reduce open areas by more than 5%, a change of development standards beyond what would be permitted in the zoning on the property,
Where does it say that?
all on the same page, 35, subsection C, 5.
Okay.
5C. And the plan too, I think, to maybe help make this a little easier, they have actual square footage as far as like what is allowed and what is anticipated. So say if you do go beyond that, or if there is any intention to ever go beyond that, that would be a substantial change, right? That would need to be amended. But what I'm hearing is this wanting absolute security that Planning Commission will review everything, and I can't, based off of the wording of this, it's not intended that way, and so I can't say that that is how it's going to be moving forward.
Now that I've reread C along with D, I think that your language for the cremations, I think that works. So basically, anything more than a 5% change in open space or to the collector streets, the director knows they can't approve that. Okay, I think I get it, and I can't speak for the rest of the commission, but I think C and D and your condition make me feel a lot better.
Great.
Look,
Would you like me to read it again?
Yes, if you could give me your wording again.
Forest Lawn will coordinate with the city planning director in the event of a proposed increase to the number of monthly cremations allowed under existing SCA QMD permits to determine whether the city will require any additional review or an amendment to the specific plan.
Thank you. And any discussion on that specific point from the rest of the commission? No? Okay. So we'll ensure that's incorporated in our final amendment, our final motion. But at this point, any other questions for Forest Lawn? Then we move to comments from the public.
I did not receive any comments. Are there any members of the public present? I see none, Chair.
Okay, so I will, at this point, close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Can you change the slide to the recommendation?
I move that we adopt a resolution recommending that the City Council adopt a mitigated negative declaration pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act and further recommend approval of a general plan amendment 250001, change of zone 25001, specific plan 250001. And the
Including the revised conditions of
condition, yes.
approval and the new condition drafted by
conditions.
Forest Lawn.
I'll second.
That's the one.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Are we actually discussing the motion now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so I still have a concern about the height and the lack of detail in the specific plan. I think that we're essentially, when it comes to the actual architecture, the overall guiding principles are three, which are very vague. Timeless memorial architecture, artistic elements may include statuary, mosaics, contemporary works, water features, and variety of internment property. Yes, there are specific details about materials that would be used, the types of art that would be included. There's very little about the buildings, the height, the cutouts, how light's going to come through. I'm very concerned about the massing and density of how this could end up looking. And while it may end up completely beautiful based on what you've said, I don't think the specific plan has enough detail to ensure, for my personal feeling, that we're going to necessarily get what you're describing. Things could change, plans could change, and I have a concern that it's going to be ministerial from here on out. So I would like to see more detail included in this plan.
Okay. Other comments?
Do you need to open the public hearing again? If you want to.
I'm sorry?
I think you might need to open the public hearing again.
Oh, you wanted to address? Yeah. Okay, so I'll reopen the public hearing.
Thank you, Siobhan Cooney with Forest Lawn's team. Forest Lawn would be, well, again, hearing the concerns, Forest Lawn would be willing to volunteer to add to the specific plan prior to it going to the city council, some conceptual elevations to reflect the details that were discussed this evening with the planning commission.
Could that come back to us as an information item so that we could see it? Is an information item that doesn't slow them down any, but at least and we can see it before, see it.
Would this be an informational item before it goes to council or after it goes to?
Just as an information item, whether it's before or after. Well,
Yes,
we
can do that.
I can't speak for the rest of the commission. I'm okay of it going to council without us seeing what they're going to propose in the elevations, but I'd like it to come back to us at some point without slowing them down as an information item.
Yes, we can do that.
I'm a little on the fence. I appreciate that you're trying to address the concerns here. We're being asked to basically say to city council, we think this is good enough. And I appreciate what you're offering, but we're never going to get a chance to see it, which means we're endorsing something that we haven't seen. And I will just say that there have been times where we have put specifically things in our minutes that we wanted presented to city council, and they have not been. And so there is a bit of a history of our particular comments and feelings not making it to council. Now, I'm not saying you would do that, but I'm saying there may not be an enforcement that happens. What if it goes to council before you have a chance to do that? So I don't want to vote against this, but I do have a concern just because it's a specific plan and because we are moving in a direction where we're trying to give people more flexibility, that I just want to be comfortable that what we're approving is something I'm comfortable with. And right now, I'm not quite there.
Could I ask other commissioners how they feel about that extra proposal?
I understand where the vice chair is coming from, and on one hand, I don't want to slow them down any. On the other hand, if they're going to propose those elevations, it would be nice to see them before they go to city council so that we're totally comfortable on our recommendation. So if they were to do that, like I said, I'm concerned about, them being able to move forward in a timely manner. But if they were to come back to us, if we were to continue the item, how long would that delay them, and when would they be able to get to council?
I think it depends on the timing of us getting those conceptual elevations, right? So our next hearing date is April 1st. I don't know between now and then that's sufficient time to get the conceptual renderings done, but let's say it is, because our packets do go out, would be going out next week.
So
Well,
I
let me
understand.
ask a question of you, right? So we're basically talking about something that we've heard you guys say could be a 20-year plan. Probably first phase may take 4 or 5 years. Is holding this up a month going to really set you guys back that much? I mean, are you ready to break ground on this lower lot? It doesn't seem to me, I mean, there's still structures there. There's still I'm just wondering, it's not like, you've got an abandoned building and you want to remodel it and you're ready to go right now. This is a long-term plan, and so I think it deserves a little more attention if that's okay with you guys.
Understood. I think I was hoping to just remind the commission respectfully that this is a unique use and a unique property owner developer. And I know you probably hear from a lot of applicants and developers, oh, just trust us, we know what we're doing. And I'm aware of that. But I respectfully would say that in this case, you actually really do know the applicant and the entity here and what they're doing. Several of you have indicated that you've been to other Forest Lawn properties. You're very familiar with the existing property here. And the specific plan requires the development to be compatible and consistent with the existing cemetery. And as you've seen in your own experiences in the images in the specific plan, and as you've heard from Forest Lawn in testimony this evening, the cemetery is intended to be, and by its very nature, needs to be timeless and classic. And they're regulated at the state level in terms of materials and quality of development. There's guidelines and principles and standards in the specific plan. So I understand where you're coming from and that there's a bit of trust, but I also would like to remind you that it's very much a known quantity, and you see their work and their examples of what they're doing. So I think and I understood that the commission was largely satisfied with the details of what you were hearing tonight in terms of the concerns about the southern and western perimeters of the property and the relationship to the nearby residential uses, and that it's just not having a visual representation of that detail that was explained. So the offer is to add that visual detail along the lines of what was discussed and explained to the commission tonight to the specific plan before it goes to the city council. So we would like to move forward, and I don't think there's anything that's going to be different in that than what was discussed tonight. I don't know if there's anything else the team wants to add, but we'd appreciate being able to move forward, and we're trying to figure out the best way we can do that and hear and address your concerns as well.
Thank you, yeah. I understand what you're saying. It's also a different issue for us because use of a specific plan for such a small area is quite unusual. And the specific plan presented to us lacked a lot of information about the actual intent. Typically when we see things come before us, we do see some kind of representation of the architectural detail, even as you heard earlier, palm trees for antenna. So, we get some of that information and it helps us consider what we want to do. So what I'm hearing here is we have really two options. We could approved tonight and it will go to City Council, but after it leaves us, we don't get any input to what City Council hears. We can't speak at City Council because it's already been approved by us. And so they won't necessarily understand our concerns. They will get minutes that express that, and certainly we could make sure that this particular part of our discussion is minuted, but even so. The other option that we have is to continue this item to a future meeting, and the meeting date to be determined. So that would be up to staff as to whether or not they can fit that in a timely fashion and how fast you could actually get those images to us. So I think those are our basic two choices at this point. And
If I may interject there.
yeah,
So you do have the option of just, this is a recommendation. This
Right.
is not final in any manner at this stage. So what we have always recommended and has done in the past is when we identify that there's a sincere issue that the Planning Commission is identifying, for example, maybe the lack of a representation of the details that were described here, we note that in the staff report. It has nothing to do with just the minutes. It's an actual item pointed out to City Council. Because we have to walk them through, yes, they generally agreed. I'm just using this as an example, right? Yes, the Planning Commission generally agreed with the recommendation of staff, also agreed with like modified conditions, additional additions that were presented by the team. However, they wanted to note for City Council XYZ, right? Concerns that, yes, this is a unique project, concerns that, you know, although details were described at the council meeting, they're not or at the Planning Commission, they weren't necessarily reflected in a specific plan. Is that something City Council believes is important? That's up to them, but if there's some sort of recommendation that you would like to add as far as maybe City Council might not think it's important to necessarily write that down, but the Planning Commission does, so they would like to add that to the recommendation.
and again, I understand that's how it's supposed to work. And unfortunately, we've had a number of instances now where that just doesn't happen, where things that have been said by Planning Commission, when it gets to council, are not presented in the staff report. And that's not a criticism of the people doing that, it's just omitted. And so, you know, this type of concern doesn't necessarily get through into the staff report.
So if I may, I will personally, because what I am presenting has to be a part of the motion, not a discussion that occurred, right? So if this is the case that a majority of the city, or of the, sorry, I keep saying city council, the majority of the commission would like this noted to say, we believe, like we generally agree, this is what we agree with. We agree, you know, that they should move forward with the MND, that, you know, we're fine with the general plan amendment, the zone change. However, for the specific plan, this is what we don't agree with. And if that is in a motion, that has to be presented to city.
I guess it's confusing, though, to me, because we'd basically be passing this item while telling the council we're against it, because we haven't seen it. So I'm not really sure how that works practically from what we're actually putting through. Like, we're on the record, we'd be approving this, but theoretically, like he said, I mean, if I went to the council meeting and it was not the representations that I thought we were going to get, I'm going to stand up and speak against the item that I voted for 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's a very odd situation to be putting us in.
No, totally.
And I'm not
get
sure
that.
why we would go through all that when we could, I mean, my personal opinion is asking for a 1-month continuance or something along those lines seems to me to be the best option, because this is not a project that's shovel-ready. But I would leave it up to the rest of the commission.
Mr. Chair, so I would concur with Commissioner Mead, and I've been down in your position, I've been up here, I've been staff. I understand the position that everybody's in, but I think to go forward, you want the best possible recommendation. And I wouldn't think that you would want, even if it's a positive recommendation with concerns, it would be cleaner if you went forward with positive recommendation that didn't have concerns. And the other thing I think we have to be concerned about is we don't know, the Forest Lawn could get bought up by some conglomerate. And I know there is one out there that owns a lot of facilities, and they're not going to care what about the things that you said that you would take care of. So we have to think about that too. I would rather continue it to a date specific, so the staff doesn't have to do another mailing. And if we were to go to April 15, I think that it would be cleaner to be able to get those elevations and then have us make a positive recommendation and having a comfort level of knowing what we're seeing and what we're approving, and not just leaving it open to chance.
So let me ask, in light of those comments, if that was proposed by commission, does staff and Forest Lawn agree that they could have that paperwork in place by April 15th?
I think that, well, I think we would all endeavor to do what we can to meet that date. But I do agree with Commissioner Malakoff that the continuance should be date certain to April 15th. If we're ready, we're going to go. If we need additional time, we'll provide a report asking for another date-specific continuance. But I would rather go at this time to April 15th to give us some time. I don't think April 1st will work. I think it's too quick.
Could your architect provide those elevations so that we have a better comfort level, and staff can give you the deadline that you would need to get them back to staff for them to write a report by April 5th for the April 15th meeting?
I just want to be clear too that we're talking about conceptual elevations, because we're talking about a specific plan, long-term development, as everyone's aware. So I think the intent is that the Forest Lawn architectural team would work on preparing a visual depiction of the concepts that were discussed tonight and the details, but it would still be conceptual. So this is not it could be part of the specific plan, but it's still subject to the overall parameters of the specific plan.
I think where I'm coming from is we would be passing a framework here, right? And there are areas in this document, in the specific plan, that say as long as things generally conform to what's in the specific plan, then it's a ministerial decision, right? If there's not enough in there, that what is it generally conforming to? So I think conceptual artwork would make a huge difference, because then we could say, okay, this is conceptually the look, the style, whatever that we're going for, that you're planning to do, and then that tells the director of development what is similar and what is substantially conforming to that. Without that, it's a very vague notion. And so I think even though they'd be conceptual, that would go a long way in making me feel comfortable, is establishing that kind of baseline from which there can be deviation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I also think, let's put it in, if the architect or somebody that's architecture is here, the conceptual elevation would function like and provide a framework for what the future, for what the interim director would be able to look at. So it would be like if you had a Queen Anne Victorian home and you had to stay within the framework of that architecture, and then if you proposed a craftsman or a mid-century, that would be totally different. So the conceptual will give you that framework the same way like a Queen Anne would be very different than a craftsman or a mid-century.
But I guess I would just say that framework is already there, because it has to be, the specific plan requires it to be consistent and compatible with the existing cemetery, which is already there.
Right, but do all the existing cemetery buildings have a step back at the second floor? Do they all have the porticos? Do they, everything that was described to us in fairly great detail to address our concerns about the RV park, there being kind of a big flat wall there? I think those are the things that we want to make sure are in the plan, so that if you come with like just a brick wall that's 45 feet high, the director of development would go, well, this is not substantially the same.
Well, and I guess I just want to be clear, because that already is all in the specific plan. The requirement for openings, the step backs, that's all spelled out in the specific plan. So the director could not approve a 45-foot wall, even under the current specific plan as drafted. That could not be
I
approved.
read through the whole thing. I read both yours and I read the one that was produced by the city, and I read the updated conditions, and I still don't feel like it's strong enough in there in terms of, it just does not seem detailed enough to me. That's just my opinion.
Any further questions for Forest Lawn or staff?
I'm wondering if, as an alternative, if there were a condition that spoke more to these elements, particularly adjacent to the RV park, would that be sufficient, or would that provide the comfort level that would be needed?
Yes.
So I'm not clear what kind of wording you're thinking of.
It would be along the lines of, I mean, we would work with the applicant, but it would be along the lines of Mr. Madison's description. I'm sorry, Mr. Emerson's. Mr. Emerson's descriptions as far as the openings, I forgot what he called so the openings, the porticos, the arcades, those type of features. If the condition spoke to more of those items, particularly along the south and west elevations.
My personal view would be that we're asking now to redraft, and that's not something we should be trying to do here in just a few minutes. The solution of having some other images drawn up for a future meeting seems to be a more practical way of proceeding. At that time, there may be other conditions that you want to propose that would reinforce the concerns of the commission, but I don't think we should try and redraft it here at 8:30 at night.
If Mr. Chair, you said it well, I think, and so did Vice Chair Mead, and in the scheme of all things, I know that nobody likes a continuance. I get that, and I'm sorry that that's the direction that we're leaning. But in the scheme of all things, 1 month isn't going to, change the world on this project. And like Vice Chair Mead said, that it's not like it's like shovel ready and you're ready to go. It's something that's going to occur in phases over a great deal of time. So just getting that extra information and having a recommendation that goes to council that doesn't have any strings to it, I would think would be better for you.
Okay, so any further questions for staff or?
No, I guess just so we can clarify what we're asking the applicant. The only thing it's a big thing. The only thing we're asking the applicant to do is to give us some artist's impressions of what particularly the south and west pieces of this development will look like. That nothing else will be changing. It's purely we're going to have new images to get a sense that they're in compliance with the general things that they.
We'll still have that
said.
condition relating to the cremation facility that'll still be part of it.
Yeah, I will also want to include the wall along Landau because I am concerned about that being too much of a.
Duval.
I'm sorry, not Landau, Duval. Duval, not Duval.
Duval.
Not just the south and west.
Okay, so in this,
So- I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure, because whenever we have a continuance or if the commission is leaning that way, I do want to be very clear because if we're continuing something, you need to have all the information, right? So is it just renderings that the commission is looking for at this point? That's it.
unless there are any other amendments that the staff or Forest Lawn wish to propose at that time, but yes.
So, because I don't think Forest Lawn has any other.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that we're understanding as staff, because basically that's the only thing that would be new that we would bring back.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think any of us here want to give them multiple lists. So this is the issue that I think is where the hangup is. And of course, we'll add that condition on the crematorium.
That's already included in the motion. Yeah,
Well, the
so,
motion was to adopt, so I think we're leaning towards a different adoption.
well, if you move forward with what's
continue,
presented.
Yeah.
because we're continuing this meeting. So it's like a pause. We're not
Didn't they-
changing anything.
Did somebody read this recommendation?
So,
It's
right,
That's already done. We're in the middle of discussing a motion, but I've reopened the public hearing. And at this point, I'm going to check that there are still no public comments.
I see none. City Attorney, I have a question
no,
for you.
I just want to make sure that there are no final statements from Forest Lawn before we move forward,
To open
because
the public hearing.
if, it's one thing for the commission to want something specific in the specific plan, right? For example, you did indicate setbacks, right? But I see like development standards, I see property line of building on Duval and Ramon, and it's 10 feet. And so I'm trying to figure out to make sure that you get what you're asking for. And that, because it might be that, I'm not talking about them in particular, I'm saying any applicant might not agree to wanting to present that, is what I'm saying. So if there's something else, getting an indication of whether that is agreeable to an applicant would always be helpful, right? Because then we would just come back to a continued meeting and then basically be in the same place that we were.
And so far,
I
all
don't
of-
know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we've all said enough that you understand what our concerns are in terms of the height and the massing. I mean, it seems to me like it's those two issues, and along all the walls.
The articulation
Yeah,
for the walls on the south and west.
articulation and the height and the massing. And it was
So-
addressed very well verbally by the architect, but there's nothing like that, nothing close to that specific in terms of visuals or conceptual art in the plan, except for pictures of your existing buildings, but that doesn't, the existing buildings are much smaller. They are not a really long wall. And so I think that's the concern. So that's what we're trying to get at.
So the conceptual that you discussed is what that she discussed to give us that framework is what we're asking for.
Right. Okay.
Just want to make sure that they have a chance to address you as a final comment.
Sure.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I was inclined to agree with Director Molina, and our preference would be to actually take a few minutes to draft a condition that covers in language the concerns that the commission is expressing. I'm hearing that you want a visual and the conceptual elevations, but again, I just want to be clear that they will be, reflecting the framework that's already there and the standards that are in the specific plan with greater specificity that it sounds like you're looking for.
But I think you have to take into consideration, like Vice Chair Mead said, that in the future, it may not be any of us that are having this discussion. So it has to be something that works for people that are going to be outside this room that didn't have anything to do with the discussion. That conceptual framework's going to help them be able to make a better decision. And it also gives you, it gives you more of a framework that that you'll operate within, so that somebody doesn't come up with something crazy in 7 or 8 years that you don't want to do.
Okay, so I think, as you stated it, is what we're looking for, and that is limited to those renderings. Yeah. Okay.
Can we, if the direction of the commission is to continue, can we do it to a date certain?
April 15th.
Yeah. Apparently, yeah.
We didn't get a comment from you that was an acceptable date.
They want yesterday.
Can we make sure that is the actual meeting? Because wasn't one of the meetings moved up to a Tuesday? And I thought that was in April.
having a Tuesday.
So we moved to a Tuesday,
Monday was a
remember?
holiday.
Yeah, I thought that was in May.
I think you may be referring to a April 22nd?
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, I thought there was a planning commission meeting where we were going to be meeting on a Tuesday.
That would be the third Wednesday. I mean, the fifth Wednesday.
Okay.
All right.
So April 15th is the day we would actually be meeting? I just wanted to make sure since we all just started saying it.
And
Sorry, if
ironically,
you
it's
could just give
text.
us 1 second, we're double checking, because there is, just on the website, we already have April 1st for Planning Commission.
So April
I
15th should be the
don't
next.
see.
So I would continue it to April 15th. Our staff met this morning. We went over our future items list for upcoming meetings, and April 15th is on that. April 22nd is a special meeting to talk just about objective design standards and our code update.
I think the way the law works is we continue it to April 15th, and if for some reason that meeting is canceled, it goes to the next regular scheduled meeting automatically.
Right. Okay. City Clerk, you had a question for legal?
I did. City Attorney, are we continuing this hearing open?
Yes.
Okay. And so there is a matter of, there is a motion on the floor, and it is my understanding if we do make a motion and move on a continuance, that would render the original motion mute.
To withdraw.
Withdraw it.
Yeah, we would just withdraw it. So if there's a different motion on the table, we would need it. But right now, the original is still what is being considered before the commission. So if you do have a withdrawal, that would have to come from the person who made the motion or seconded the motion.
Okay. So, well, I don't think there is a feeling of continuing with the current motion. Will the person who proposed the motion be willing to withdraw?
So when we continue, that motion will be gone and we're going to make a new motion.
We'll
Then
make-
I withdraw.
Yeah. And seconder?
That would be me. I withdraw.
And then, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the whole item to April 15th.
Okay. And,
We need a second.
yes.
I will second.
All right. Okay. Can we move to a vote?
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Malakoff and a second by Vice Chair Mead. Please vote. And motion carries, all ayes.
Thank you. And before moving on to the next item, do we need a 5-minute break? Yes, please. So, okay.
Dan,
Okay, Chair Lee, we're ready.
Thank you. We've concluded our public hearing items. Moving on to item 4 on our agenda, non-public hearing items. Item A, time extension number 260001, request for a one-year time extension for conditional use permit 18035A, approved by the Planning Commission on February 21st, 24, for the construction of a 13-space off-site parking lot in support of the previously approved 20-unit timeshare and resort hotel. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Lee, members of the Planning Commission. As stated, this presentation is a request for a one-year time extension for CUP 18035A. So CUP 18035 was approved in 2020 for the construction of a 4-story building for a 20 timeshare units in the existing CCBC Resort Hotel, which is located approximately 400 feet south of East Palm Canyon between Palo Verde and Melrose Drive. CUP 18035A was approved in 2024 and amended the original CUP to add an off-site parking lot to the project limits. The amended CUP provided the additional 13 parking spaces which were needed to satisfy the conditions of approval for the timeshare CUP. Conditional use permits expire 24 months after the original date of approval unless an active building permit is maintained or an extension of time is requested. CUP 18035A was due to expire on February 21st of 2026, and the applicant submitted their application for the time extension on January 26th of 2026, which is ahead of the expiration date. Approval of this time extension would establish a new expiration date of February 21st, 2027, after which no additional time extensions may be granted for CUP 18035A. This is the site plan that was approved by the Planning Commission for the amended CUP, and I'd like to note that as part of the time extension request, the conditional use permit itself is not under review, nor is the applicant requesting any modifications. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve time extension 260001, granting a one-year time extension for conditional use permit 18035A, subject to the previously approved conditions of approval. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Commissioner McPhail.
Yeah, just a little confirmation of what you were saying there. 18035 was the timeshare project. Then 18035A was the parking lot, but was the timeshare now part of 18035A? What? It's all one thing now.
That's right. 18035A amended that original approval for the timeshare to incorporate the off-site parking lot into the project limits. So yes, they are part of the same project.
Because all we saw here was just the parking lot. So I thought if it was 18035A, shouldn't we maybe have seen the whole thing? We're not just approving an extension for the parking lot here. We're approving the timeshare and the parking lot project all together as
The
one
extension of
year.
time for the whole
Yeah.
project. That's correct.
So that brings us to March the 18th, 27, 1 year. Do they have one more year after that? It's 2-year extension. Is this the last extension, 20 to
So-
27?
The CUP is only eligible for one-year time extension. However, as happened with this previous amendment, if it's a major amendment that goes back to the Planning Commission, that effectively restarts the clock. But for the existing CUP, this is one-year time extension.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was confused. I thought we were only looking at the extension for the parking lot. So you're saying this is an extension for the entire project?
Yes.
Okay, so no work has been done on the actual timeshare project?
No, the parking lot was needed for the conditions of approval for the timeshare, and that's what the amendment approved, and the time extension is for all of it. So no
Got
work
it,
has
because
been
they
done.
can't move forward with that until they've moved forward with the parking lot, essentially, or in tangent? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Malakoff.
Yeah, I was under the impression it was for the whole project because the parking lot was to solve problem with the conditions of approval on the original 18035. That's correct, right?
Can you restate the question?
Well, the parking lot came in because they couldn't meet the conditions of the original CUP 18035. Then the whole thing got another 2 years when we approved the parking lot, which I can't believe that was 2 years ago. So just to reiterate what Commissioner McPhail was saying, so they have 1 more year, and then after that, they have, the whole thing expires, they have to come back and get everything approved again.
That's correct.
Commissioner Bishop? No. So I guess I'm re-clarifying everything that other people have said, but this has been a confusing project. So the applicant has made no attempt to actually develop the parking lot in the time that we gave them. And it implies in the staff report that they're simply waiting for the new development code to come out in hopes that we will not require them to create that parking lot. Is that correct?
Yes, so there is certainly no guarantee that the development code update will no longer require them to construct this parking lot, but my understanding is that when the applicant was trying to meet the conditions of approval for the timeshare, it was prohibitive to find a parking agreement to get those spaces in perpetuity. Staff worked with the applicant to examine other options, whether that was flexibility in parking standards or using on-street parking to meet those parking standards, and no such options were available. And so it was discussed that potentially in the future, we might have more options, there might be more flexibility in the code, and the applicant does have the option to essentially, I guess, see how that plays out. That was the previous discussion.
And that parking lot, or the lot that he purchased in order to build the parking lot, has just been left unattended and appears just to be weeds now. So nothing has been done with it in the time that
Nothing has been done because it was approved to be a parking lot. I would add that from the city's perspective, I think part of the reason there was an encouragement to see if there's more flexibility in the future is the sense that use of that site for a parking lot might not be the best use for a lot in our downtown. And so if there was an avenue for flexibility, I think
but the city
it'd be
hasn't.
beneficial to see what that ultimately looks like.
But the city hasn't promised that he can do away with that
No.
after the development code is updated.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I mean, I would like to ask the director then, I don't believe that when the development code is updated, that changes their conditions of approval or the approval that was granted on CUP 18035 and 18035A. They would have to come back to us to change those conditions. The development code's not going to change what we've already approved.
Correct. So a couple of things to Shirley's question. No, the city hasn't committed in any way that we were going to amend our code to facilitate the use. What we do know from for probably about almost a year now, well, maybe not a year, but we've been talking about with our code update that we did want to look at, parking flexibility. So that potentially is an option. But to Commissioner Malakow's point, correct. There is a CUP in place right now. It has conditions of approval. One of two things potentially, well, a few things could potentially happen. If our code is updated and adopted and allows for flexibility before the time extension were to expire, they would have to come back to the Planning Commission, modify that CUP to take advantage of those provisions if they're provided for. And also, so yeah, that's probably what would happen. There's other options, but I think that complicates, whether their time extension expires before the code is updated or some other thing occurs.
and that modification would start the clock again,
Another
if
2
that was to
years.
happen.
Yes, it would essentially be a major modification to the CUP.
But we could send code enforcement to deal with the weeds.
Yes, certainly.
So, okay. And this is something that I know staff took an action to come back and discuss further, but at the moment, it's not clear that we have any other option except to extend anyway. Is that correct?
I mean, I do believe the Planning Commission does have the option to,
The way development code reads, the zoning code reads is that the applicant gets 2 years with their approval, and they either have to inaugurate the use and comply with the conditions within that time frame, or they apply for a time extension. And that's the extent that what our code speaks to with respect to time extensions. It doesn't have any findings or anything other than that.
I'm just wondering, does this relate back to our previous discussion of time extensions for development in the development code? We were talking about that last time.
Yes.
So same thing, we don't have any wiggle room here.
Not currently the way our code is written.
Okay.
Unless the circumstances of the environmental impact change or there's some new factor. But just because they didn't do anything or they didn't act on it isn't something we can deny it on. But the environmental circumstances would have to change for us to take a negative action.
Any further questions for staff? Nope. Thank you.
thank you.
Then I'll entertain a motion. Oh,
I'll
wait a-
recommend.
Any public comments?
Shirley, we have no public comments. Thank
All
you.
right. Very good. Now I'll
All
entertain.
motion. I said all motion.
So you're motioning to extend the 1-year time extension.
Correct. So if you would like me to read it out.
Yep.
I recommend to approve the time extension for number 26-0001, granting a 1-year extension from conditional use permit number 18-035A, approved by the Planning Commission on February 21st, 2024, subject to the previously approved conditions of approval and based on the findings contained in the staff report, with a new expiration date being February 21st, 2027.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? We'll move to a vote.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Bedard and a second by Commissioner Malakoff. Please vote. And motion carries. All ayes.
Okay, thank you. Having discussed with staff in the break, there is no problem for staff if we were to continue the rest of our agenda for today to a future meeting. Does anybody have an objection?
Isn't the only thing left just a brief update from
Well,
Cynthia on the development code update?
there's the development code update, and then commissioners' comments, city attorney and staff.
I
I
want
mean, I guess
to.
I would ask how long of an update do you have? I mean, if it's 5 minutes, I say we just get through the rest of this, because I would
can
like
do
an update on where we are in the process.
I can do it in less than 5 minutes.
All right. Yeah, well,
Let's just do it.
All right.
looks like the feeling of the commission is to continue. So we'll move to item 3B, development code update.
All right, terrific. Good evening, commissioners. So the final section of the first review of the Development Code draft is here. We are on the very last section. The steering committee will be reviewing the objective design standards next Tuesday. They will then proceed to the Planning Commission for an extended review. So the Planning Commission, this body, will receive that draft section next week. You'll have that in advance of your study session, which will occur a month away on April 22nd. The section is substantially shorter at only 26 pages. I think you'll be pleased with that. However, because this is an all-new section to the Planning Commission and to the city, we expect there to be more questions on the effects of the implementation of objective design standards. Objective design standards, I want to briefly update you on what these are as part of this code update. The focus here is really on clarity, providing clarity and consistency, making the application and interpretation of the standards easier to understand and to comply with. We're consolidating the standards into one section, refining the language so that it's measurable and objective rather than subjective. This helps to ensure that projects are reviewed consistently and align them with the state requirements, particularly on review of housing projects. In our instance, it also will apply to mixed-use and commercial projects as well. So it's not change in design expectations, it's just a clearer and more organized way of applying them. That was less than 5 minutes. I'm
was.
available for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Okay. Moving on to item 5, Commissioners' comments. Commissioner Bedard, no?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to congratulate Dominique. She got her accreditation from the American Institute of Certified Planners. That's no small feat. It's a very difficult exam. And I think she deserves all the kudos in the world for studying so hard and passing it on the first time.
Yeah. Vice Chair. Nope. Okay. I had something. Okay. Couple of things. First of all, our task list that we maintain for things that the Commission need to bring up.
I was going to make a comment on that, and I didn't know that.
I'll give you a moment later. So we require 2 commissioners to request anything, so I'll ask in a minute for permission of somebody else to agree. There were 2 things that came up particularly in our minutes this week. One was a legal presentation on the MAP Act so that we understand the different limitations. So I just want to get that on our list so that we don't lose sight of that. And the other one was a report on results of investigations into how to deal with hate speech on electronic signage. So that was another, I think, a legal issue. Sorry, they're both for you. And then the other thing I was going to suggest, and this, let me just check. Is there another commissioner that agrees with those items?
I agree with you on both.
Okay, good. And then the other thing I was going to ask about, because it does come up fairly frequently. We saw it in the antenna discussion particularly. But I'm wondering if there is any thought in staff, and take it away and think about it, let me know. But do we have a way of tidying up the way that we do all the boilerplate? Because very often we get a condition in the packet, like a certificate of occupancy for an antenna, something like that, because it's just part of the boilerplate. And there are a lot of shalls in there. And one of the things that concerns me is if we put a shall in, then they can't meet that condition. So those conditions are going to theoretically, legally prevent them from doing what we're asking them to do. So do we have, I'm thinking of almost like a checklist with all the conditions, and you sort of, there are word processing programs that would do it. You just check the ones you need, and they would go into the conditions. So I'm just suggesting the staff look into how we might do that, and that would simplify the paperwork we get, and it would also make it clearer for the applicant. All right, so just those 2 items. Commissioner McPhail.
Well, yeah, I was going to bring up when we talked about in item 7, a question regarding future agenda items, and then in Planning Commission work plan, I had a request for staff to chew on or say no or go away or whatever. And should I do this in item 7 or not?
Yes.
Now?
Do it now.
Okay.
Yeah, do it now.
I was wondering if it would be possible to ask staff to prepare a presentation after we get through some of these other things, maybe with Mr. Becerril from Planning and Economic Development, to how do we, the city, coordinate with Agua Caliente planning in regards to tribal parts of our city? In particular, I'm interested in opportunities for housing development, if there are any, and economic development. What interaction do we have and how we coordinate with them? And maybe we could even see if their planning director would like to be part of the presentation as well, because I've seen in the news so many stories from the city of Palm Springs and other cities where things seem to be happening on tribal land in relation to housing, particularly in Palm Springs, and we don't hear very much here. So I'd just be interested in kind of an overview of how we coordinate and whether there are opportunities or obstacles for us, particularly in housing, but just in general, to do things on tribal land. So if that's a big thing, but that would be my request.
I have just a few clarifying questions.
Yes.
To Chair Lee's 2 points about during the discussion of the Subdivision Map Act, I think what was suggested was that the city attorney's office could prepare a memo on the Map Act language with respect to time extensions.
Right.
And then also a memo with respect to hate speech. And so that is what I recall was discussed. Is the commission now asking for a presentation in lieu of the memo or the memo?
No, just
A follow-up.
whatever you need to do, but I want to make sure things don't just slip away. We have so much stuff going on. Those were minuted today, but I wanted to make sure that an action follows. So really, this is ensuring the action.
Yes, and
But I think, though, on the Subdivision Map Act, it was more than just time extensions. It was explaining what exactly a tract map is, what a parcel map is, what a vesting tract map is, just so that the commission is clear on how they all work.
I see, okay. Okay, and that was, and with respect to Commissioner McPhail's request, I think that we can accommodate that, but I think, as indicated by Chair Lee, just a second commissioner would echo that request.
I would also like to see that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and
And then I was just going to piggyback on what you guys have all already mentioned, which is I actually reached out to Stephanie earlier about the time extensions, because this has come up multiple times, and there's been questions about what the state requires, what the state allows. Are there laws that say we have to allow a certain amount of time and rationale and all that kind of stuff? And so I think that could be a memo. It doesn't need to be a presentation, but I would like to get some clarification on that, because it is going to come up again in the development code update, I think, and it'd be good to have that, the facts of what actually the state allows and requires.
What was Eric involved in?
I was just suggesting he might be someone who would want to be part of the presentation if we're looking at economic development, housing, because I think, didn't he present parts of the housing element the last time?
But you're talking,
I just mentioned.
but you were relating that to the presentation on how the tribe works with the city. Yeah, they could explain what the compact is and how it works and how how the tribal zoning works and things like that.
okay, any other commissioner comments? We move on to item 6, the city attorney comments.
No comments tonight, thank you.
Number 7, staff comments.
No comments.
Okay, in which case I adjourn this meeting.